Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic part 3. Which is what if Naruto thought he was a monster and abandoned Konoha part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto and Gaara were bounding through the dense forest, constantly looking around them to spot a potential threat. It was about 10 hours or so into the second part, and things were going well, considering nothing happened yet. They needed to retrieve a heaven scroll, that much they knew for sure. Gaara, you sense anything yet? Naruto asked, and Gaara shook his head. A few little clouds of sand flew back into Gaara's gourd as the two young boys continued their search for any possible targets. With Gaara's tracking sand at work, and Naruto being able to track air movement with only his middle and index fingers extending outward a bit, they would eventually find someone. Baki had once told Naruto that his affinity to wind was almost inconceivable. He had great a natural talent at using wind power, and aside from the Junin and Tamari, his control over it was the best out of the Suna team. He had learned how to sense ripples in air flow caused by chakra, breathing, and heat or cold. The only drawback was that it required a lot of concentration. Suddenly the two stopped, and jumped in opposite directions to avoid a spray of Senbon needles. The two Suna genin landed in a small clearing, and turned to see a group of 3 ninja wearing straw hats and carrying umbrellas. The tallest one, and apparent leader of the group who had a scar over his right eye, stepped forward with a grin. He looked to them and spoke, "All right small fry, hand over your earth scroll and we'll let you live." Naruto smiled under his mask, "So, that means you got a heaven scroll then." He turned to Gaara, and the red-headed Jinchuriki nodded to his teammate. Naruto turned back to the 3 Rain Nin and laughed, "Nah, I think we'll take your scroll instead. It would be easier than for us to win against you 3 than pretend to lose and hand over our scroll." Naruto then went into a fighting stance while Gaara did likewise. The leader of the genin of the Hidden Rain team just grinned, "Fine then. Bayu, Madari, I'll handle these 2 myself." The guy pulled out his umbrella and laughed, "You idiots were stupid enough to enter as a 2-person team, and now you challenge me to a fight. Hey, whatever, your funeral. Shigur, don't you think that's a leaning towards overkill with these 2? Spoke Madari, the second tallest of the 3 with black markings over both his eyes that resembled facial paint. Shigur gave him a look, and Madari was quiet after that. Gaara gave Shigur a look to the opposing aim Nin, "We would advise you to surrender. It would be in your best interest to give up and hand us the scroll instead of attacking us." Shigur shook his head, "Whatever, this battle will be over soon enough." He tossed his umbrella in the air, and made a few hand seals, "Take this. Juro Senbon." The umbrella sprayed out a shower of Senbon needles that was aimed for Naruto and Gaara. "Tch, I've had worse." Naruto laughed, and crouched a bit with his palms opened up, "Fuden, Buyu no Senka's no Jutsu." Naruto quickly spun around as a whirlwind kicked up the dust in the area. The needles were deflected by the maelstrom, and Naruto stopped shortly after with a smirk on his masked face. Gaara meanwhile had covered himself in a cocoon made of sand. The sand crumbled away, dropping the deflected needles to the ground harmlessly. Shigur looked irked to say the least. He barely had time to react as a fist to the fist sent him flying backwards a bit. Naruto stood in his low crouching stance while Gaara sent a torrent of sand towards the 3 ninja. Gaara lifted his 2 hands and spoke, "Suna Kanajuchi." 3 separate streams of sand sprouted out of the ground, and sent the 3 aim Nin into the air. Gaara quickly caught them, and slammed them into a nearby tree. They all slumped to the ground, unconscious, but not dead. Gaara was pleased with this outcome. After scrounging through their pockets, the 2 Suna Nin found their scroll, and it was indeed a heaven scroll. "Well, that was easy. Let's go, Gaara." "Right. I'm sure Ne-san and Kankuro will be joining us at the tower soon enough," spoke the sand user. They jumped into the woods, heading to the central tower. 11,111,111. As the 2 Jinchuriki left the clearing and the 3 unconscious aim Nin, Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame came out of their cover and looked around. Akamaru, while not terrified by the battle, was a bit jumpy. According to what Kiba understood, those 2 were quite powerful. What bothered him more was that the masked Suna Nin was bothering Kiba's sense of smell. His scent, it seemed familiar, but why? Kiba-kun, we should get moving if we plan on getting an Earth Scroll. Hinata spoke quietly, shaking the boy from his thoughts. He nodded, and the three-leaf genin jumped off to find said scroll. 11,111,111. Tamari and Konkuro were taking a short break, since it was around lunchtime. They had been in the forest for almost 10 hours now, and had seen nothing aside from a few squirrels and a snake, which Tamari promptly killed out of sheer fear of being bitten. Konkuro would later identify it as nothing more than a harmless garter snake. Man, it sure is harder to find anyone without Gaara and the squirt to help us track movements. Konkuro said, and Tamari nodded. She finished her ration bar, then took a swig from her canteen before pinging it to Konkuro. Suddenly, a snap of a twig was heard. The two teens stiffened slightly, but remained motionless. They slowly began to continue their activities while sending each other silent messages with their eyes. The sound of a kunai whizzing through the air caught their attention, and they jumped back to avoid injury. A group of leaf ninja appeared before the group. All three were male, and were grinning. Tamari immediately categorized them under the no talent but managed to get this far group. Konkuro sighed. They looked to maybe be third-year genin, as they were around the same age as the siblings. Well, looks like we lucked out. Give us your Earth Scroll or we'll have to fight you. We've got the fight in our favor. 3-2. Spoke one of the three. Konkuro snorted at those words. So you've outnumbered us. Big deal. Ever hear of the saying that it's quality, not quantity, that determines a fight? Spoke the puppet user. 5 minutes later found the three genin tied to a tree by wire while Konkuro was putting the newly acquired Heaven Scroll in a pocket while whistling. Tamari turned to the three angry leaf nin and winked at them. It's been fun boys, but we have places to go and people to see. And with that, the two siblings left the leaf nin humbled and humiliated. 11,111,111. Naruto and Gaara were about halfway into their journey to the tower when they felt a breeze blow through the trees. Killer intent suddenly washed over the area, and Naruto froze in place while Gaara stiffened a bit. This feeling was horrid, a murderous intent that seemed almost inhuman. What the hell? Naruto spoke while he turned to Gaara. Gaara shook his head, and uncorked his gourd. I don't know, but it's in our pathway to the tower, we should be ready. Gaara replied, and Naruto nodded as the two slowly moved through the darkness. Minutes later found the duo overlooking Konoha Team 7 facing off with a GR Kunoichi. She had taken off her straw hat and was now running through the thick foliage as Sasuke tried to keep up with her. Naruto and Gaara themselves were having difficulty tracking down the amazing speed that genin usually didn't possess, Well? Asked Gaara. Naruto shook his head as Sasuke was kicked into a tree. Sakura jumped in front and spoke to the GR Nin. Stop. We give up. Just take our scroll and leave us. The pink-haired Kunoichi threw her heaven scroll to the taller Kunoichi. However, what happened next made Naruto's concern rise. The GR Nin laughed, and ignited the scroll into flames. I'm not here for a silly little scroll, you foolish girl. I'm here for Sasuke. She pulled out a kunai, and threw it in Sakura's direction. Sakura was prepared to block the weapon with her own kunai, but was surprised to see a wave of sand catch it instead. The GR Nin then turned and was blasted by a strong gust of wind. Hey, I don't know what your problem is, lady, but the girl just said she gives up. Leave her and her teammate alone. Naruto spoke as the enemy Kunoichi landed gracefully on a nearby branch. Hey, well, if it isn't the Suna Nin. What are you doing protecting the leaf Nin? Run along before I decide to make things painful for the two of you, laughed the Kusa Nin. She went into a taijutsu stance and smiled wickedly. Are you okay? Naruto asked Sakura, and she silently nodded. Hey, Gaara, this crazy lady's fast, let me take care of her. Do you think you could guard them while I deal with her? Sure, just be careful, Naro. Gaara nodded, and moved closer to the two wounded leaf Nin. Naruto then turned to find that the woman was gone. He closed his eyes, and lifted his two middle and index fingers. He didn't feel anything irregular. Naro, behind you, cried Sakura. Naruto whirled around to see the Kusa-nin appear out of the tree behind him. She quickly delivered a punch to his gut, and followed up with a kick to his jaw in a matter of seconds. He went flying into a nearby tree, and smacked the back of his head, knocking him out. Sakura quickly threw a kunai to his general direction, and the weapon embedded his jacket into the tree, holding him in place. Gaara went into a stance, and turned to the now standing Sasuke. I'm going to need your help. I'm not as fast as her. Sasuke nodded. Watch out though, she can use Doden substitution. Gaara turned back to the enemy, and blasted a wave of sand at her. She jumped to the side, and avoided the attack completely. However, she didn't notice that Sasuke was now at her side. He quickly delivered a powerful kick into her ribs, and she crashed into a tree. Gaara sent another wave of sand, and trapped her to the tree. Only one hand was left free. Sakura threw a kunai, piercing the hand and embedding it into the bark, leaving the Kusa-nin vulnerable. Sasuke took his chance and went through a series of seals at rapid-fire pace, Kaden, Ryuka no Jutsu. Using some guided wire that he wrapped around the Kusa-nin, a stream of fire towards the woman. She screeched in pain as she was incinerated by the flames, that is until she suddenly meddled. Substitution. Sasuke yelled out, and the kunoichi reappeared behind Gaara. Well, the Shukaku boy, She smirked at the small amount of shock on his face. For a split second, the woman's hands glowed an eerie blue hue. She delivered 3 precise jabs to the boy's navel at blinding speed before his sand could react, and he reeled over unconscious. She sneered at her victory, and turned back to the remaining Konoha nin. Now then, to take care of what I came here for. Her neck suddenly stretched and before he could react, bit her teeth into Sasuke's neck. He cried out in pain as burning sensation was felt rack through his body. The Kusa-nin retracted her neck and laughed as she looked upon the Uchiha boy. Sasuke. Sakura ran up to said boy, and held him up as he screamed in pain. What did you do to him? She screamed out. Instead of answering the girl's question, the woman put a hand over her face and seemed to peel away the skin there. A pale, ghastly face with snake-like eyes replaced the womanly features just moments ago. Oh, don't worry about him. If all goes well, he'll be even more powerful than before. Who are you? Sakura yelled, standing up with kunai in hand. She was scared, yes, but she would be damned if she didn't protect Sasuke and the other two who had helped them. I am Orochimaru, and if Sasuke wishes to seek power, then he will come to me in due time. Kukukuku, spoke the person, who appeared to actually be a man. You freak. Sakura was about to run at the man, but Orochimaru disappeared in flurry of leaves. 11,111,111. Sakura was sitting under a tree's upturned roots, watching over the 3 boys who had been unconscious for about a day now. This wasn't good. Sasuke had a fever, Gaara was out cold, and the blonde boy she had confirmed to be Naruto was unresponsive. She had chance to look under his mask, and indeed, it was her missing teammate. It took every bit of her willpower not to hug the boy out of joy, but she had to attend to the matter of the wounded right now. I just hope you 3 are going to be okay, she spoke, and suddenly Naruto stirred. He looked around, and noticed that he was under a tree. He felt that his mask was still on, and turned to his friend Gaara. He checked over him, and realized that he was alive, yet unconscious. Did you bring us here? Naruto asked Sakura after taking a seat. Sakura nodded. Yeah, I figured that since you 2 helped us out that I owed you that much. She dropped her head, and turned to Sasuke. That woman was actually a guy named Orochimaru. He did something weird and bit Sasuke in the neck. There's some weird marking there now. He's got a fever now too. Naruto turned to the shaking boy, and noticed she was right. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you 2 better. Gaara and I are strong, but that guy was fast. He also did something weird to Gaara. She spoke again, and that got Naruto's attention. He made his hands glow blue, and did some weird kind of punching attack on his stomach. He's been unconscious for a while now. How long has it been since we started the second part? Naruto asked her quietly. It's been about 23 hours and 52 minutes. Sakura replied to the masked blonde. That long? Naruto got on his knees, and picked up a rock. He tossed it at Gaara's head, and was pleased to see that a small stream of sand deflected it. What did the attack on Gaara do then? The two remained quiet for a while, then Sakura spoke up. Naro, can I ask you something? Naruto raised an eyebrow. Sure. Well, before she could finish her sentence, a blast of wind interrupted their conversation. Sakura and Naruto turned to look in the clearing, only to see the same three-sound nin from earlier today. Naruto cursed under his breath. He gave Sakura a look. Stay here, all. No, I'm not leaving you to take them on alone. Just because I'm a girl doesn't mean I can't fight. She pulled out a kunai, and looked to see Naruto, smiling. Naruto felt his pride for Sakura grow as she looked defiantly at him, and he nodded. Okay then, looks like at least one of them can use wind, this should be fun for me. The two jumped out of their hideout, and they stared down the three with glares. What do you guys want? Naruto asked, gritting his teeth. The leader of the group, Dosu, who was covered in bandages, stepped forward. We're here to take care of the Uchiha. Naruto growled, hey, what's with it and attacking an unconscious? Get out of here and I'll pretend this never happened. Zaku, a boy with hair standing up sneered, hey, it's Shorty. I was hoping to get a chance to fight you. Zaku lifted his hands, and smirked. Sakura quickly threw a kunai, and it went past the group, and cut a string. Dosu soon found himself avoiding a giant log by mere inches while another one came flying at him from the other direction. He avoided the second one, only to see Sakura throwing a spray of kunai at him. He rolled to the side, and felt himself get knocked back by a blast of air. He crashed into a tree, but quickly got up with a growl. So, you're a wind user too. Hey, this should be fun for Zaku then. Sakura was occupied with avoiding Zaku's blasts of wind while trying to find an opening. She had no traps left, and none of them had worked. She landed, and felt a tug on her hair. HMMPH, what beautiful hair you've got here. Kin, the female member of the sound team mocked, you know, if you spent more time training and less time on this hair of yours, maybe you wouldn't have been caught in such a predicament. Sakura, however, remembered a lesson she received from Kakashi about such a scenario. She slowly turned around with kunai in hand, and cut her hair with a swift slash of the weapon. Pink strands fell to the ground. Sakura gave a silent prayer for her once beautiful hair, and ran at the black-haired girl with renewed sense of determination. Kin, who had not expected this, fell back a few steps only to find the girl she was fighting gone. Suddenly, the world began to spin around her. She found herself growing dizzier by the second as it spun faster and faster. Just when she thought she was about to vomit, she felt herself stop, and felt a tug on her own hair. Now what was it you said about hair? I will admit, mine was beautiful, but if I'm not mistaken, a kunoichi with extremely long hair is just as bad as a girl who purposely keeps her hair in great shape and longer to catch an enemy in this kind of situation. She pulled at Kin's hair as she spoke into her ear, but getting caught in a genjutsu as simple as the one I pulled off is just as bad. Sakura yanked at Kin's long strands, earning a scream of pain from the Oto kunoichi. Sakura quickly delivered a snap kick as she spun Kin around, and the enemy kunoichi was sent flying backwards as Sakura took her stance, staring at Zaku. Well, what are you waiting for? Zaku smirked, and yelled out as he opened up the valves on his hands, Zenkuaha. The blast went flying at the kunoichi, and she didn't have time to avoid the supersonic blasts of wind. Bracing herself, she put her hands in front of her face to shield herself. However, a giant tree seemed to fall from nowhere, and she looked to see the wooden M take the attack, shattering it into millions of pieces of bark. Before she could say anything further, a figure in green jumped down and went into a stance. Lee, Sakura spoke, looking at the taijutsu specialist that she met earlier, and had been slightly creeped out by. Sakura-chan, are you okay? He asked, and she nodded. Good to hear. Do not worry, I shall protect you and ease the Suna Nin. He gave her a thumbs up, and jumped over to East Naruto. Naruto was having difficulty with this Dosu character. Naruto, for some reason, felt that he should avoid that metal arm at all costs. Why? He wasn't quite sure though. He would feel a slight uneasiness in his stomach whenever he got too close to the bandaged ninja, and thus brought Naruto to his decision that close range was not a good idea for him. Naruto moved to avoid another attack from the bandaged genin, and this time it brushed against his side. Naruto felt his body shake a bit, and he fell over in a sudden daze. The world wouldn't stop spinning. The blonde looked to see Dosu give him a cold glare with his one visible eye. Hey, impressive. You're still standing after I managed to hit your side. You're tough, but no genin can survive a direct hit from my melody arm and stay conscious. Dosu pulled back his right arm to attack, but was knocked a few yards back by a green blur. Naruto eventually gained his bearings and looked to see a boy with a bowl cut and green spandex. He was a Konoha nin from the Hitai around his waist. Are you alright, Suna nin? Naruto nodded, and got up slowly with the boy's help. I am Rock Lee, and I have come to help you. You have protected Sakura-chan, and I cannot let these enemy ninja defeat you. Allow me to east. Naruto gave him a grateful nod. Thanks, my name's Naro Uzaki. I appreciate your help. Naruto turned to Dosu, who was getting up with a groan. That was fast. I didn't even sense you unleash any chakra when you did that. Lee grinned. That is because I am unable to mold chakra. Even though I cannot perform ninjutsu or genjutsu, I still will become a great shinobi with my taijutsu. Hard work can beat even genius, and I wish to prove that. Naruto found himself grinning, but then looked back to Zaku, Dosu, and Kin, who were all getting ready to attack. Sakura joined the two boys, and turned to them both. Lee, thanks again for the help. Naro, are you okay? Naruto nodded, and quickly blocked a few Senbon with a kunai as Kin ran at them again. Sakura went at her and the two were soon entangled in a dance of taijutsu and steel. Naruto decided to go toe-to-toe with Zaku, seeing as they both were able to use long-distance attacks. Lee, using his speed, was proving to be quite an inconvenience to Dosu. Lee ran around Dosu a few times, and then suddenly appeared in front of the Oto Nin. Dosu had no time to react as he was kicked straight into the air. Lee unraveled the bandages around his arms, and jumped into the air, and within an instant was behind Dosu, shadowing the boy's ascent into the air. Lee quickly wrapped his gui's strips around the Oto Nin, and then grabbed a hold of the sound user. The two started spinning downwards at a dangerous speed, as they began to increase speed in their descent to the ground. Omoto Renge! Lee yelled as they hit the ground, creating a large crater as Lee flipped through the air, landing on his feet, avoiding damage from the impact at the very last second. As the dust cleared, Lee slowly got up, and tried to walk, but opening the first gate and using the forbidden taijutsu took its toll on the boy. He staggered, and looked behind as he heard a groan from the Oto Nin he had thought to be defeated. What? Dosu got up, and laughed as he cracked his neck. Not bad, but luckily for me I had managed to shift the bandage's grip on me with my sound waves to loosen them. I was able to lessen the impact by rolling to the side a bit to lessen the impact, still hurt though. Dosu lifted his melody arm with a masked smirk. Time to say goodnight, kid. Leave the work of shinobi to those who can actually use their chakra. Lee suddenly felt his entire body shake as sound vibrations ripped through him. He fell to the ground, unconscious and unmoving. Naruto saw his comrade fall, and growled in frustration. He was occupied with avoiding Zaku's sonic wave attacks, and now he had Dosu and Kin to worry about as well. Sakura was holding up quite well it seemed, but she was tiring out a bit. Still, her taijutsu was quite better than what Naruto remembered it to be when he was still part of Team 7. Her hits were faster, her movements were more graceful. Most of her attacks were with her feet and legs, but her punches were nothing to scoff at. Naruto suddenly felt himself get knocked back as he was caught in midair by Zaku's attack. Naruto was about to crash into a tree when he heard a shout, Baika no Jutsu. Naruto bumped into a rather rubbery surface, and turned to see Choji Akamichi using his clan's signature technique to stop Naruto from crashing into the tree. Thanks, Naruto said as he and Choji landed. Choji nodded, and then looked to see Dosu was stuck in place and putting his hands at his sides as though he were wearing pockets. Kage main no jutsu. Success, came the drawling voice of Shikamaru Nara. Dosu growled as he was forced to lift his right arm, and then noticed his other hand going to his melody arm. Shikamaru smirked. You know, it's funny. I noticed that you're mainly a close-range guy from the looks of it. I, on the other hand, need to keep my distance in order to use my technique effectively in most cases. Shikamaru and Dosu slowly walked closer to each other, and the scowl never left the bandaged nin's face. Shikamaru knew that these darkened woods were hindering his family's technique, but he would only need to borrow some time until Ino used her technique on the girl. Ino was hiding in a nearby tree, waiting for the right moment. Kin and Sakura were fighting close combat right now, and it didn't help that her family's Shintention no Jutsu needed the opponent to remain still in order for it to work properly. Come on, Billboard Brow, keep her in place for just a few seconds. Sakura managed to deliver a swift kick to Kin's ribs, and the black-haired girl fell as she lost her wind for a few seconds. Ino gave a silent cheer, and quickly jumped to the ground and hid behind a bush, while performing the needed hand seals. Seconds later, Ino slumped over as Choji landed next to her body to watch over her as Ino took over the Oto Kunoichi. Kin was about to get up when she stopped, and drooped her head a bit. Seconds passed, and Kin got up and gave a smile to Sakura. Hey, Billboard Brow. Sakura took a step back, but then noticed that Shikamaru and Choji were here as well. Ino nodded, and picked up a kunai from the ground. She turned to Zaku and Dosu, and put the kunai to her neck. Give up now, or the girl dies. She held the kunai a little closer as it pressed against her skin. Zaku and Dosu seemed to catch on, and looked to each other. You're bluffing, Dosu said with a hint of humor. Truth was, he had no clue if she was or not. The girl was still Kin, but there was something different, some kind of jutsu was being used to control her. Zaku was about to raise his hands to strike when the whole area was flooded with a sudden malign chakra signature. Everyone looked towards a swirling, purple vortex, and Sakura let out a gasp as Sasuke Uchiha slowly got up. His skin was covered on his left side in black, flame-like markings. He turned to Sakura, then the others. What's going on here? Dosu smirked. Hey, so the Uchiha's finally awake. About time. Dosu sensed the tainted chakra of Orochimaru's curse mark, but he didn't care. As far as he was concerned, this Sasuke wasn't anything more than a kid playing ninja. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. So, you and your team are responsible for attacking us. Dosu merely nodded, and felt himself become freed as Shikamaru lost control of his jutsu. Naruto was giving his old teammate a wary look. That chakra, something wasn't right about it. When Sasuke suddenly grinned maniacally, Naruto knew something was up. Sasuke. Sasuke turned to see Naruto, and his eyes widened. He stopped himself quickly, then nodded. Naro, thanks for helping us, but I'll take it from here. Sasuke suddenly disappeared, and Dosu was sent flying forward as he skidded to the ground. Sasuke grinned a bit, and took out a kunai. He ran at the bandaged nin, and delivered another powerful blow to the head. Dosu was coughing up blood, and his bandages were now stained as he tried to get up. The Uchiha planted the Oto nin's face into the dirt, and took a look at Dosu's melody arm. So, this a device you use for amplifying sound? Nice. Sasuke drove a kunai into Dosu's right shoulder just below the nerve where a pressure point was, and Dosu howled in pain as the Uchiha seemed to dig the weapon deeper into the boy's skin. Well, I wonder how useful it will be if you can't even move your arm. Dosu continued screaming as he felt muscle being torn into, and Sasuke only grinned sadistically as he heard the pained cries. Sasuke, stop it. He can't fight back anymore. Naruto yelled, seeing that Dosu was no longer struggling, too overwhelmed by the pain. He was now unconscious, and Sasuke got up. He turned to the others. Suddenly, Sasuke lurched forward as a pain racked throughout his body. He felt a burning sensation on his neck, and fell to the ground. Ino had removed herself from Kin's body upon feeling the malicious chakra from Sasuke. She was now being held by Choji as he waited for her to wake up. Zaku was mad now. Not only had they wasted too much time, but their target had managed to take out one of their teammates. That's it. I'll just blow you all away in one clean sweep. Zaku lifted his arms, and Kin's eyes widened as she recognized what was about to happen next, and jumped back quickly as he opened his air valves all the way. Time to die. Zankyokukuaha. A giant blast of supersonic wind flew at the team, Naruto being in the front. He went into autopilot as he went through some seals faster than he usually did. Futen, Kazabakufu no Jutsu. A wave of high-speed winds collided with Zaku's attack, and the two boys were now locked in a battle for dominance over wind power. What? Impossible! Zaku yelled, seeing the short-haired boy holding his own against Zaku's ultimate attack. Zaku increased his chakra output, and growled as he strained to knock the blonde Sunanin away. Naruto, despite his amazing chakra reserves, was at a disadvantage. He still didn't have complete control of his wind affinity yet, so to keep pouring more and more chakra into his attack was an effort. He turned to the others behind him. I don't know how long I can hold this attack back, you all need to get out of my way in case I lose ground here. As he spoke those words, he began to get pushed back a bit. This technique of Zaku's was powerful, he wouldn't deny that. If only he could get a better footing, and if only he had more time to prepare. The rookie Leaf Nin jumped away, and Naruto began to pour more chakra into his attack. He could see the powerful winds of Zaku's attack slowly gaining the upper hand, and Naruto growled in anger, "You call this a wind attack? Hey, my girlfriend's given me better fights." Zaku smirked. In all fairness, this attack isn't really a wind affinity, it's simply compressed air and supersonic waves being blasted from these air valves. Naruto dug deeper into his reserves, and felt himself begin to gain more power. That's it. A little more. He let out a burst of chakra, and Naruto's Kazabakufu no Jutsu began to push Zaku's blasts of air waves. It's over. Suddenly, the two attacks erupted, and sent Naruto and Zaku flying into different directions. Naruto crashed into some underbrush while Zaku eventually fell into a small shrub. Kin, while holding Dosu, ran to Zaku. The two turned to Sakura and the others, and she picked up her earth scroll and tossed it to Sakura. "We give up." And with that, they left. Sakura pocketed the scroll, and quickly ran to where Naruto was. She saw a small trail that seemed to be where he skidded when he hit the ground. He was trying to get up, and groaned. That's when she saw it. Naruto's mask had come undone, and his whiskered face was visible to the world. He saw her, then noticed his mask was off. He panicked, tried cover his face with a sleeve, and quickly pulled his scarf back on. He knew it was too late though. "Naruto," she said softly, and walked closer. His eyes widened, and he turned away. I don't know anyone by that. Naruto, please don't hide from me like that. I know it's you." She felt some tears fall. Her missing teammate and unofficial younger brother was home. "I won't tell." Naruto turned to her, and upon seeing her tears, drooped his shoulders. I had a reason to leave, it wasn't B. "I know. Kakashi-sensei told us," she said softly as she gave him a hand to help him up. He quickly retracted it as he heard that last part. "Wait. You know about." He put a hand on his stomach, and she nodded sadly. He immediately turned away. "Well, I guess you really. No, Naruto, we don't hate you for it. If anything, we've got a greater respect for you." She wrapped her arms in a hug that spoke all the emotions of sadness and guilt she had experienced in the past months. "We missed you, Naruto, for a while. I thought you were." She didn't finish, and slowly cried. Naruto found himself silently crying too. "It's okay, Sakura-chan. I'm alive." After a couple of seconds, Sakura drew away with an awkward smile. "When did you get so darn strong?" Naruto blushed. "I have Gaara, Kankuro, and Tamari-chan to thank for that, especially Tamari-chan." Sakura sensed a hint of pride when he spoke the Suna Kunoichi's name. She smiled knowingly, and leaned close to her old teammate. "Oh, Naruto, you didn't find a girlfriend, did you?" She raised an eyebrow, and laughed as he blushed. "Wow, Naruto. I didn't know you were into exotic women." Naruto was beet red now, but managed to speak. "She and her brothers, and almost half of Suna knows of the fox as well, and they all see me as somewhat of a hero." Naruto left out the part of Gaara being a Jinchuriki as well. That was Gaara's choice. "Wait, Gaara." Naruto quickly ran to where the others were, and noticed Sasuke seemed to be standing again. He looked to Naruto, and the two seemed to suddenly realize what had happened. Naruto knew Sasuke wasn't dumb enough not to recognize the Dobi. The blonde ninja crouched down by Gaara, and looked to Sakura. You said he got hit where? Sakura gave a thoughtful look. In the stomach, 3 times I think. Naruto gave a groan. Crap. Naruto went into his pocket, and pulled out a kunai. He pressed the kunai down to Gaara's arm, only for the sand to stop it. Naruto let out a sigh. Naruto's friend was okay. Naruto shook Gaara gently, and after a minute or so, the redhead opened his eyes slowly. Naruto. The Shukaku Jinchuriki asked quietly enough that only said blonde heard, looking around. He sat up, and winced in pain as he felt a sharp pain rack through his abdomen. Easy, Gaara. You've been unconscious for almost 14 hours. Sakura-chan here brought us to a safe place after that Kusa-nin got away. Naruto explained. Gaara looked to the pink-haired girl, and gave a nod. Thank you. Sakura-san. Sakura smiled lightly, and nodded. Thank you, Gaara. You and Naro here helped save us earlier, so it was the least I could do. Besides, she smiled, Suna and Konoha are allies, right? Gaara and Naruto nodded, both silently agreeing with those words. 11,111,111. After a kunoichi named Tenten came and fetched Lee, and Team 10 made sure everyone was okay, the 2 Suna-nin and Team 7 went onward. Naruto and Gaara were okay with the scroll situation, but Sakura and Sasuke were still in need of a heaven scroll. Naruto briefly told Gaara that Team 7 was aware of who he was, and explained that he was fine. Gaara seemed acceptant of it, but still warned the group politely not to reveal Naruto's identity for his safety. The 2 Leaf Genin agreed. The foursome had taken a short break to rest and eat when a few kunai were caught by Gaara's sand out of nowhere. Gaara quickly turned to his immediate left, and noticed 3 ninja wearing breathing masks and wearing hidden rain Hiite. Alright, kiddies, hand over your earth scroll, now, spoke one of the 3. Sasuke got up, and so did Sakura. You really expect that to happen? The same ninja spoke up. Well, I was hoping for this to go quick. Mubi, Kagari, you know what to do. The 3 melted into the ground, and now the 4 genin were on their guard. Gaara looked around, and his sand was constantly sending out tendrils, though much to Gaara's surprise, he was having some difficulty in directing it where to go. Something's wrong with my chakra, he spoke to Naruto, who turned quickly. That Orochimaru guy told you about, he hit you in the stomach 3 times with some kind of chakra technique. I think he went for your seal. Naruto spoke quietly, and was relieved to see that neither Sakura nor Sasuke had overheard them. Gaara nodded, and continued with his scanning of the area. Sasuke's Sharingan was activated and looking over the area, and he sensed no presence with his eyes. They're hiding themselves well. He pulled out a kunai, and waited for an attack. Sakura held a few shuriken in each hand, listening for the slightest sound of movement. Gaara's eyes suddenly snapped open. They're under us. The genin instinctively moved, and 15 separate rain nin jumped out of the ground, weapons drawn and aiming where the 4 had been. Sasuke looked over them with his Kekai Genkai. They're all fakes, some kind of clone jutsu. Well, looks like they discovered our secret, Oboro. What now? One of the clones asked as he turned to the rain nin with both eyes visible. It makes no difference, Mubi, we'll kill them and take the scrolls either. The clones were cut off from their conversation as a blast of sand destroyed them all. Gaara pulled back his sand a bit slower than usual, and frowned. My sand's bane weighed down by water. Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu, just like when we fought Zabuza. Sasuke said, and he continued to scan around the area. Naruto suddenly found a hand grabbing onto his ankle, and the next thing he knew, 2 solid figures burst from the ground and punched him. Unfortunately, they didn't have time to avoid Gaara's sand as it grabbed a hold of the 2. He spun them around by his tendrils, and smacked the 2 together. They fell with a solid thud, and didn't dissolve. They were real. Well, that's 2 down. Sakura said, and looked around. She suddenly felt cold steel pressed against her neck, and she slowly turned to make brief eye contact. How did? The rain nin pressed his weapon against her a little harder, and she turned around again. Hand over the scroll, or little cherry blossom here dies. Sasuke's eyes narrowed as his Sharingan spun, 2 tomos in each eye watching every movement. He slowly developed a smirk on his face. You're bluffing. Oboro laughed, and without warning, slashed at Sakura's throat. Naruto screamed out, and Gaara's eyes became expressionless. Sasuke's eyes widened. Sakura-chan. No. Naruto ran at the rain nin, fury blinding him. He was about to aim for the masked nin's throat with a kunai when the man's eyes widened, and he let out a breath. He then fell over as Sakura appeared behind him, hand formed in a shape for chopping at the neck. She had knocked him out. Nice job, Sakura, Sasuke said as he deactivated his Sharingan. Naruto stopped, and looked to where the body of Sakura had been, only to find it gone. What? Genjutsu, Sakura said simply with a grin. She rummaged through the unconscious shinobi's pockets, and found the needed, and Naruto nodded. Since when did she use that? Gaara looked to the sky, and then to the others. I suggest we try and make it to the tower. I'm sure Ne-san and Kankuro are waiting for us. The others agreed, and sprinted through the trees towards their destination with their needed scrolls. Within 3 hours, they had found the tall building, and a wave of relief spread throughout the group, even to Gaara. They entered the tower, and immediately sat on one of the benches, weary, yet relieved. They had made it. 11,111,111. Upon opening the scrolls, Naruto and Gaara were greeted by none other than Baki. Well, I was wondering when you guys would show up. Temari and Kankuro were getting worried about you two from what I heard from the ninja that their scroll had summoned. Naruto gave a weary grin underneath his mask. He decided to not tell Baki about his teammates' knowledge of who he was, and instead settled for a hearty laugh. Sorry, Baki-sensei, Gaara and I got held up helping out someone who was being attacked for no reason. We formed an alliance with Two-Leaf Nin, and made it through with their help. Baki, despite the fact that his two youngest and possibly most talented students had gotten sidetracked, smiled a little. Well, I'll be sure to tell the Hokage about that. Never bad to put in good word to your alley's leader, right? He patted Naruto on the head. You two have made me proud. Wash up and get some rest, and be sure to see Kankuro and Temari before you go to bed. With that, Baki disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto and Gaara were no more than a minute into their journey to the designated floor where they would stay until the second part was up when the two boys felt an ominous feeling of danger behind them. Naruto slowly turned while Gaara turned around in his usual placid manner, though if one looked closely in his eyes they could see some slight uneasiness in them. There, down at the end of the hall was a very distraught-looking Temari no Sabaku, and behind her was Kankuro, mouthing the words, "Run. Where the hell were you two? Huh, Kankuro and I got through that forest in less than 13 hours, and here you guys are after a day and some odd hours. I feared the worst. You guys shouldn't have taken that long to. Temari-chan, we can explain." Naruto raised his hands to protest. "Ne-san," Gaara said, feeling the killer intent from his older sister, "we were. Can it?" she said, pulling out her fan. "I won't be the one you're telling it to." She nodded to her battle fan, unfolded, and being held like a hammer. She unleashed a war cry, and ran at them. Naruto followed his instincts and ran like the smart shinobi he sometimes was. He knew all too well what Temari could do when angry, and he wasn't in the mood for a review right now. Gaara was a strong shinobi, and a relatively level-headed boy. He had stared numerous ins in the eyes as he crushed them, and had killed Junin with 3 times his experience with relative ease. Needless to say, he wasn't one who was easily scared. However, there was one thing he knew that held more power than the most deadly of Suna Junin in all of Wind Country. That thing was an angry Suna Kunoichi. Unfortunately for him, his sister was both one of the best Kunoichi in Wind Country, and also very mad. Bad combination for the two Jinchuriki. Gaara decided for once to join Naruto in his retreat from an inevitable beating. Gaara would most likely hide in his Suna no Muya after some running, and let Naruto take the damage. Naruto would understand, Gaara told himself. An hour later found a broken and beaten Naruto on the ground while Kankuro explained to a group of Konoha Anbu what had happened so that no arrests would be made. Gaara stayed inside his cocoon of sand, even though Temari had calmed down and was now applying some bandages to her boyfriend. 11,111,111. When night came, Gaara sat in a small room meditating while Kankuro and Naruto slept. Tamari was in the room that was connected to theirs by a door, sleeping soundly as well. Gaara frowned as he opened his eyes. He felt off, and his control over sand was a bit harder to do. His shield of sand still protected him, but when he wished to manipulate sand on his own, it took more of an effort and more chakra. He noticed this back in the forest, and when his sister had banged on his sand dome when she went berserk on the two Jinchuriki. He sighed, and decided to continue meditating. Until he could find a way to figure out what that Orochimaru person had done, he could only bear with this problem and try and rest his body for now. After all, he only had 3 more days until the second part of the exam was over. Who knows what could happen next? Naruto stood next to Tamari as he and a large group of genin faced the Hokage in a large arena. The third was currently explaining the meaning behind the whole Chunin exams, and how it also related to various hidden villages' relations to each other. After the elderly man finished his speech, a rather sickly man stepped forward. He coughed a bit as he began to speak. I'm Hayate Gecko, and I will be the proctor of the preliminary matches of the third round of the Chunin exams. We still seem to have too many shinobi to conduct the final part of the exam, so these will serve as an elimination portion. Those who qualify will move on to the finals. He coughed a bit. Now then, before we begin, do any of you feel that you may wish to drop out? Your forfeiting will not affect your team. From here on out, you all fight for yourselves. I'll drop out of this, came the voice of the man named Kabuto. His name was taken, and he left the arena shortly after. It turned out that matches would be randomly selected from a computer screen that was on one wall of the arena. The others stood and watched as the names of the remaining genin flashed over the screen. It was deadly silent the whole time, and then, will Sasuke Uchiha and Yoroi Akado please take their positions in the center of the arena? Everyone else please go to the balconies on either side of the arena. Hayate said, finishing with a final cough. Everyone did as asked, and Sasuke slowly walked to take his position. He grimaced as he felt a sharp pain through his body. He was finding it harder to dig into his chakra reserves without feeling the pain of this curse mark. Kakashi told him to bite down the pain until he was done with his fight. Luck seemed to give in for him. He was in the first match. Sakura was standing next to Kakashi, watching as the two contestants prepared themselves. Kakashi-sensei, is Sasuke going to be okay? Kakashi looked over to his pink-haired student, and smiled a bit. Don't worry, Sakura. You forget how tough Sasuke can be when the time calls for it. She nodded, and turned back to the fighters. She noticed a presence next to her, and looked to see Tamari. Hello, Sakura. Sakura smiled at the older Kunoichi. She had found herself making fast friends with the Suna shinobi, and it helped that Naruto had told his team about revealing his identity to them during their time in the forest. Tamari found out after Gaara and Naruto made it through, and immediately approached Sakura to talk about it. Flashback. Sakura had been sitting in the lounge of the tower, a little more than 1 hour after they had gotten back from the forest. She heard some footsteps, and turned to see a blonde-haired Kunoichi approaching her. Looks like she found out. Sakura thought, seeing the stern look in Tamari's eyes. Tamari stopped in front of Sakura. So, you know of Naro, huh? Sakura nodded, and smiled a bit. Don't worry. I won't tell. Tamari nodded. For your sake, you better not. Naro means the world to me. Harm him, and I'll harm you by 100-fold. Sakura nodded, and let a genuine smile form. Don't worry, Tamari-san. Naro is like a little brother to me. It makes me happy to see that he has someone who cares for him that way in his life. She giggled a bit, and Tamari softened her expression to a grin. Haha, you know, he told me that he used to tick you off a lot. He actually gets scared at the thought of seeing you angry. Tamari chuckled. Well, that is until he got on the bad end of my temper today. Sakura raised an eyebrow. What did the baka do? Tamari laughed, then shook her head. He had me and Kankura worried, since he and Gaara were taking too long in the forest. Those two are the strongest on our team, they should have arrived before us. Sakura looked down. That's because they decided to help us. Tamari nodded. It's okay. She held out a hand. I wanted to thank you for taking care of Gaara and Naro when they were unconscious in the forest. I owe you. Sakura took her hand. It's nothing. Naro would have done the same for me. Your brother seems very polite too for a shinobi. Tamari's sweat dropped a bit. Haha, he's changed a bit since meeting Naro. The two girls talked for a while, and found they had similar ideals on being kunoichi of their respective villages. Tamari was a bit worried when Sakura told about Gaara's encounter with Orochimaru, but felt better in the knowledge that he was alive. Well, Sakura, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I think I've gained a new respect for the kunoichi of Konoha. I thought they were all about looks, you convinced me otherwise. Thank you. Tamari then left to go and meet up with her team. End flashback. Sakura and Tamari faced the battle floor below them, and watched as Hayate threw his hand in the air, then let it fall. Begin. Sasuke was immediately on defense as Yoroi attacked with taijutsu. Sasuke took a few hits, and felt slightly winded after a few minutes. Yoroi quickly appeared behind Sasuke all of the sudden, and wrapped his hand around the back of Sasuke's neck. Sasuke felt himself growing weaker, and with a strained effort, got out of the shinobi's grip. He gave Yoroi a surprised look. Haha, so, I see you've realized my secret. Yoroi said as his hands glowed blue, I can drain my opponent's chakra by mere contact. You seem to be having trouble with your chakra coils right now, so I guess I'll just take it if you're not using it. The older genin ran at him again. Sasuke couldn't even activate his Sharingan anymore. He was relying on poor reflex and speed right now. His mind was quickly trying to find a way out of this mess. Dang it, what can I do? Ninjutsu is out of the question. I'm only half as good as Sakura at genjutsu. I guess. Sasuke smirked as he remembered the words of his sensei. Even if a shinobi doesn't have ninjutsu or genjutsu, they still have taijutsu. The raven-haired boy hopped to the left to avoid another jab, and quickly ducked. He dropped to his knees, and sent Yoroi into the air with a powerful rising kick. Yoroi was surprised when as he ascended into the air to find himself facing Sasuke. He tried to block a few punches and kicks. Sasuke kicked the man further into the air, much to everyone's surprise, then followed up with something unexpected. What the? Yoroi faintly sensed the chakra signature of Sasuke behind him. That first part was a copy of someone else's move, but there's more where that came from. Sasuke. Sasuke begun by spinning himself around so he could lay a kick to his side. Yoroi blocked while laughing. Hey, nice try, kid. Sasuke kept that smirk on his face. I wasn't finished. He spun the opposite direction, and delivered a powerful sidearm to Yoroi's face from the other side. As the two descended further down, Sasuke spun around again, delivering a fist to the stomach. Yoroi let out a breath, and coughed some blood up. Here's the best part. Sasuke spun one final time as Yoroi neared the floor, and delivered another spinning axe kick to the man's chest. Yoroi let out a cry and coughed up more blood before falling unconscious. Sasuke rolled over a bit, and let out a breath. Hey, there, that's the Shishi Renden, enjoy. Sasuke kept a look on the man, hoping that the man wouldn't suddenly get up. That attack had taken a lot out of him, even after a day of rest. This curse mark was giving him hell. Hayate took a good look at Yoroi, and nodded. The winner of this round is Sasuke Uchiha by knockout. Yoroi was quickly hauled by Medic Nin to the recovery room on a stretcher. Sasuke was ushered by Kakashi. Before the two left, he took a look at Sakura. Sakura, if you have the next round, then do your best. I have to attend to Sasuke, but I wish you good luck. He gave her a one-eyed smile, and left with the Uchiha boy, who gave his kunoichi partner a nod. Hayate waited until it was quiet again, and nodded while stifling another cough. Well, the next round is Shino Aburame vs Zaku. Will the contestants please report to the floor? Shino quietly began towards the floor. Do your best, Shino. Hinata said quietly, followed by a bark from Akamaru. That guy shouldn't be a problem for you at all, Shino. Kiba added, giving his quiet teammate a grin. Shino nodded quietly and received a small nod from Kurenai. Zaku smirked as he looked at the boy he was facing off against. There wasn't anything special about him, and he seemed to be one of those strong, silent types, like so many tried to be in the ninja world. Hey, any last words before I mow you down? Zaku asked. You really shouldn't be so overconfident. Underestimating your opponent can lead to a quick defeat in battle. Shino retorted calmly. Hayate looked over the two, and gave the signal to start. Zaku wasted no time, and blasted a quick wave of air at the shady boy, Zankuaha. Shino quickly jumped to the side, barely avoiding the attack. He a few kunai at Zaku, and ran to the side as the sound ninja blasted the projectiles away. Zaku smirked as he saw that he was able to keep his opponent at a distance. He aimed his arms at the shade-wearing boy, and prepared to fire when Shino stopped. I wouldn't recommend that. I've won this match. Zaku laughed. Hey, that won't work on me. I'm not falling for any mind games today. Zaku began to power up his air waves, when he felt something blocking his air flow. What the? Shino nodded. I've sent my bugs into your air ducts while you were occupied with aiming your next attack at me. Shino was suddenly covered in his Kikaichu beetles. I suggest you surrender. Zaku growled. Yeah, as if. I'll just blast them out, and then beat you. Eat this. Zaku released the air and the sound of screaming pain was heard as the boy's arms each blasted off, and a few gasps were heard in the audience. Zaku, shaking from the pain, looked at his arms, and then to Shino. I warned you not to underestimate me. Zaku ped out from shock, and the medics rushed in before Hayate could even call the match over. Hayate didn't even need to hesitate. The winner of the second match is Shino Aburame. The sounds of barking and cheering were heard from Kiba and Akamaru, followed by some strained claps from the Junin. However, the results of that match had been a bit gruesome, not something expected from a genin. As the silence once again settled, Hayate turned to the computer screen. Very well. Hayate coughed. The next round is, he waited for the computer to stop, Kankuro vs Masumi Tsurugi. Gaara took a quick look at Kankuro. Kankuro, good luck, and be careful. If your opponent can drain chakra like his partner, then you may be in trouble with using Karasu. Baki nodded. Gaara's got a point, Kakuro. Be on your guard down there. Kankuro nodded. Right. I'll be done with this match within a minute or two either way, Karasu or not. Naruto gave Kankuro a slap on the back. Mop the floor with him, Kankuro. Baki sighed. Naro, shinobi don't mop the floor to win a fight. Going head on in a fight isn't always the best way at doing things. Kankuro laughed before walking casually down the stairs to face off his opponent. Much like Yoroi, Masumi had purple attire, and a mask covering his face. He also wore clear glees, where Yoroi had been wearing black ocular lenses. Kankuro gave the guy a smirk. Don't think this will be easy for you. I'm not a pushover like the younger shinobi here. Masumi laughed. You're smug little jerk, aren't you? All talk, and nothing else. Hayate took a step back, and coughed. Begin. Kankuro stood there, a disinterested look on his face. Well. Are you going to attack? Masumi ran at Kankuro, and punched Kankuro in the stomach, earning a cough from Kankuro. Masumi quickly followed up with a kick to the neck, and then let Kankuro fall to the ground. See? What did I say? All talk, and nothing else. Kankuro got up, and let out a ragged breath. Hey, not bad, hey. Kankuro ran at Masumi, and quickly threw a few shuriken, which Masumi deflected with a kunai. Kankuro reappeared behind Masumi while he was distracted, and put a kunai to the man's neck. Got you. Kankuro had a hold of one of Masumi's hands. Masumi laughed, and popped his shoulder out of place, and grabbed the kunai from Kankuro. He then, much to the shock of the younger shinobi, wrapped an arm around Kankuro. Not just once, but twice, like that of a snake. What kind of freak are you? Kankuro asked through a choked breath. A little talent of mine. I can pop joints out of place, and twist my muscles in any way I wish. Nice, huh? He tightened the hold on Kankuro's neck, and spoke again. I'll just wait until you black out, and go on to the finals. How's that sound? Kankuro, however, laughed. Masumi suddenly saw the bundle of bandages on the Suna Nin's back burst open, and another Kankuro. Masumi looked back at the person he was holding only to see paint chipping off. What? The free Kankuro laughed. Yeah, well, you're not the only one who's got a few tricks up his sleeves. Say hello to Karasu. The sound of a snap was heard, and Kankuro spoke to Hayate. Don't worry, he's just out cold. I made sure of it. Hayate was surprised to see how quickly the tides had turned. Kankuro had snapped the neck of Masumi with his puppet, and won the round. He was pretty sure that with Masumi's talent in joint manipulation, he'd be alright. Still, it was kind of scary seeing Kankuro simply snap the neck of an enemy so quickly. Technically, Kankuro never even touched the man. The winner of this match is Kankuro, Hayate announced, and Kankuro gave a quick nod before heading back to his team. As he reached his teammates, he looked to see Naruto giving him a thumbs up. Hey, you went easy on him, Kankuro. I was hoping for an explosion from Karasu or something. Naruto spoke, and Kankuro shrugged. The guy wasn't worth it. Kankuro smirked, and saw Tamari come up to him. Geez, always one to act like an arrogant jerk in battle, aren't you? She sighed, and gave him a smile. Nice job, Kankuro. The puppet user gave a grin, then looked to Baki, who gave a nod. Kankuro had always been one to do things the sneakiest way possible, and loved to play mind games with his opponents. Sakura looked down towards the left of where she and the other Konoha nin were to see Naruto's team was. So far, Kankuro had proven that he was a crafty fighter. She wondered what other skills the Suna team had. She knew that Naruto had gained control over his wind affinity thanks to help from some scrolls and tutoring from Tamari and their sensei. She looked back to the screen, and waited silently as the names flashed on the screen. When they stopped, she tightened her fist. Will Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno please come to the floor? Hayate called out. Sakura felt herself grow tense, but felt a roaring hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Kakashi looking at her with a roaring smile she had learned to recognize behind the mask. Do your best, Sakura, he said, and she nodded. She wasn't going to lose, especially to her rival and renewed best friend. As she walked down to the floor, she saw Naruto give her a thumbs up and grin behind his cloth scarf, and a nod from Tamari. She felt herself grow in confidence upon seeing foreign ninja give her support, and was soon walking side by side with her opponent. You ready, Sakura? Ino asked, a competitive glint in her eye. Sakura felt herself grin. Ino wasn't going to go easy on her. She wasn't expecting anything less. Alright, the fourth match of Ino Yamanaka versus Sakura Haruno is about to start. Hayate spoke, and he looked to the two kunoichi. Both nodded, and went into their respective stances. Begin. Sakura quickly pulled out 3 kunai from her holster, and threw them at Ino. Ino, as expected, avoided them with a quick sidestep, and ran to her opponent. Not bad, but not good enough, Sakura. Sakura and Ino were soon locked in a taijutsu match of kicks and blocks. Sakura silently thanked Kakashi for spending those few extra hours every evening to work on her taijutsu with her. Ino had always been a bit faster in attacks, Sakura wouldn't deny that. However, what Sakura lacked in that narrow margin of speed was made up in her greater amount of strength. Ino caught a punch from Sakura, and smirked. Wow, forehead, you've gotten better, haven't you? Sakura smiled. Don't take me lightly, I'm not the little girl that you used to know. Sakura tripped Ino up, but the blonde quickly recovered by landing on her hand, and tried for a low kick to Sakura's feet. Sakura flipped backwards, and quickly ran back to engage in combat again. Her style of fighting was based relentless attacking and being able to counter any strike thrown at her. Ino leaned back to avoid a spin kick from Sakura, and caught Sakura's calf as she recovered. She tripped up the leg Sakura was standing on, and pushed Sakura to the ground. As Sakura slid on her back, Ino jumped into the air, feet aimed to land a stomp on Sakura's abdomen. Sakura rolled to the side, and pulled out a kunai as Ino landed. She attempted to go for Ino's calf, but Ino quickly jumped back. Sakura smiled, and threw her weapon at the blonde. Ino, unable to dodge as she landed from her evasive maneuver, took the weapon to the shoulder. Sakura felt a slight pang of guilt as Ino let out a yelp of pain, but shook it off as Ino pulled it out and grinned in pain. Good, I'm glad you know enough not to hold back. Ino gripped the kunai, and pulled her ponytail back. She quickly cut at her long hair, and a gasp was heard from the crowd, namely from Shikamaru, Choji, and Asuma. Oh, great, she's lost it. Shikamaru groaned, and a nod was heard from Choji. Ino tossed the hair in front of her, and smiled at the perplexed look that Sakura gave her. Ino, what was that all about? Sakura asked, not entirely sure if this was just Ino losing her mind, or a trick. Sakura sensed something deeper than just the simple act of cutting her hair to get Sakura to drop her guard. Ino smiled as she dropped the kunai. Don't think that you're the only one willing to sacrifice your looks to win this battle, Sakura. She pointed to Sakura's hair, and Sakura seemed to understand. I saw that fight in the Forest of Death, and it showed how much of a fighter you really are. I can't lose to that. Sakura was about to move, when she felt herself glued to the ground. What? Ino laughed. Sorry, Sakura, I win this. Those hairs are actually connecting a fine line of chakra from me to you, and I've got you right in my line of sight. She made a hand seal, and smirked. This match is mine. Sakura seemed to catch on, knowing a little about Ino's abilities. She quickly made a few seals, and a small smirk was seen under Kakashi's face. Looks like Sakura's going all out, can't blame her though. It seemed Ino is unconcerned with Sakura's hand seals. After all, the blonde had Sakura trapped, and the Shintenshin no Jutsu was hard to break out of once you were hit by it. However, Sakura seemed to have pulled something. Ino smirked as she saw Sakura remain stuck in place. However, when Sakura suddenly collapsed to the ground, Ino gasped. Did she screw up the technique? How? Ino was supposed to slump over as well. Oh no. Sakura's mind could be permanently damaged. She ran over to see Sakura's eyes dilated, a small bit of drool coming from her mouth. The worst part was that Sakura seemed to be bleeding from the ears. Oh no, this was bad. Sakura. Sakura. Ino shook Sakura's shoulders, and noticed that suddenly things began to blur. Suddenly she found Sakura to be normal again, and Ino immediately caught on. Genjutsu. Ino received a kick to the stomach, and managed to land, a bit shaky, but still breathing. Sakura got up, a little weary, but smiling. I told you, don't take me lightly, Ino. Kakashi smiled. Nice work, Sakura. He was quite proud to see Sakura had taken his genjutsu lessons to heart. He remembered how easily it had come to the pink-haired girl to learn the Narakumi no Jutsu after getting the basics down. He made a note not to get on Sakura's bad side. She was merciless with the art of illusion. Ino and Sakura continued their bout of close combat, and the two were soon hanging on the last bit of fibers of their strength. Both were good, but neither were known for endurance in battle. It all comes down to this. Sakura thought, and went into her stance, and Ino followed suit. The two ran at each other, and let out a battle cry that would made Anko Mitarashi smile with pride. She was wondering if this generation had any female ninja worth acknowledging. Everyone watched as Ino and Sakura each delivered a kick to the other's face, and the two fell back unconscious. Hayate looked over the two, and then spoke. As proctor of this match, I declare neither a winner by double knockout. Kakashi sighed, but couldn't help but feel a small bit of pride for his female student. He headed down with Asuma and gave his friend a nod. That Ino sure is one tough cookie, the silver-haired man commented. Asuma laughed in response. Well, I could say the same for Sakura. She's definitely an intelligent kunoichi. Kurenai was quite impressed with how well she executed that genjutsu of hers so quickly. No doubt you taught her that. The bearded man spoke, and Kakashi only nodded as they each carried their students up to the balcony where their teammates were. Naruto looked over to Sakura, and noticed Temari give a glance over to her as well. Naruto decided to see how she was, and with Temari the two walked over to her. It seemed she and Ino were waking up, and were each grinning to each other. Sakura noticed the two Sunanin, and she smiled with a hint of disappointment. Well, looks like I lost. Ino gave her a light jab on the arm. Hey, it was a draw, not a loss. You're forgetting that I didn't advance either. Naro nodded. Great job, Sakura. Man, you and Ino did great out there. I wasn't expecting such a close match like that. This earned a light blush from both girls sitting on the balcony floor. Sakura noticed Temari take a step forward. I have to agree with Naro, you two were great out there. Gives this kunoichi something to be proud of. She smiled at Sakura, and Sakura nodded thankfully. Ino did likewise. Suddenly, Hayate's voice broke over the others. The next match will be between Temari and Tenten. Temari gave a look over to the computer screen, and nodded to herself. Well, looks like I'm up next. Naro gave her a thumbs up. Don't beat your opponent up too much, okay? Remember what Baki-sensei said about overkill. Temari sighed. Naro, you should talk. Naruto blushed a bit, and Temari giggled. Sorry, I'm just teasing you. She gave him a light peck on the visible part of his face, and winked before hopping down the edge of the balcony. Sakura couldn't help but notice that Naruto's visible portion of his face was a beet red. She giggled upon seeing that, and slowly got up. Naruto was leaning over the bars of the balcony a bit, and excitement was clearly written on his face if one looked in his eyes. Sakura smiled, once again thankful that someone had brought such joy to his life. Naruto, is she really that tough? She asked quietly, only loud enough for the blonde next to her to hear. He nodded quickly. You know that wind technique I used back in the Forest of Death against that sound ninja? She nodded in response to his question. She helped teach me how to manipulate the wind properly for it. I may be stronger when it comes to using wind, but she's better at using wind. I wouldn't really want to go toe-to-toe with her in a strictly Fuden-based match. It would totally be in her favor. Sakura's expression was of a bit of surprise mixed with admiration. For someone to receive praise from Naruto was quite an accomplishment. She suddenly felt a greater respect for the blonde-haired kunoichi down on the arena below them. Wow. Temari took a good look at the girl before her. She appeared to be shorter, and her build showed that she did keep in decent shape. She had brown hair and equally brown eyes, and wore her hair in two tight buns. She's smart. Long hair is definitely a danger in battle. Temari noted, thinking of how she kept her own hair in 4 ponytails. She looked to the proctor, and Hayate coughed before speaking. Right, the 5th round of the preliminaries is Temari versus Tenten. Begin. Tenten took a quick look to see that Temari hadn't moved from her spot. That last fight between Ino and Sakura had rattled up the aggressive kunoichi within her, and her ambidextrous hands itched to start throwing a barrage of kunai. She shook her head. Rushing headlong into a fight wouldn't do her any good. She analyzed the situation, and noticed a fan strapped to the Suna kunoichi's back. Temari noticed, and smirked. Listen, nothing personal, but I really don't think you should wait for me to attack. As much as I am for chit-chat, I'd like to get this over with. Temari received a reply that consisted of several large knives being thrown her way. She quickly deflected them with the metallic part of her fan. Good. This girl wasn't one to mess around either. Hey, well, I'm glad you're at least paying attention to the battle, and not your boyfriend up there, though even from behind his little scarf, I can tell he's a real cutie. Tenten retorted, and Temari's eye twitched with what Naruto could identify even from his view as jealousy. Oh, Tenten's in trouble, Naruto whispered, and Sakura cast him a quick glance. What do you mean? Sakura asked, feeling a rise in killer intent from the battle below. Temari-chan, though very sweet and caring, is a bit possessive of, Quote. You. Sakura finished, a grin on her face. Naruto nodded, and prayed that his girlfriend wouldn't go and lob off the Konoha kunoichi's head out of anger. Tenten was innocent, in all fairness. She knew nothing of Temari's quick, and vicious, temper. Go, Tenten, you can do it, came the cheer of Lee, no more than several feet away from the two. That's the spirit, Lee. Cheer your teammate to victory. Go Tenten, replied Guy, a man who Lee resembled in all aspects but age, height, and the fact that he wasn't a Junin. Neji Hyuga was leaning against a wall, covering his face with his hand, wondering for the upteenth time why fate decided that his life was the one with the huge, make him as miserable as possible, sign on it. He groaned, and watched the battle from his view. He seriously wondered what was taking so long. Tenten usually wasn't so hesitant in battle, but he seemed to notice that she was shaking. Tenten's afraid, Neji asked himself, unsure what caused his female teammate to grow scared all of a sudden. Tenten attempted to control her temper as she heard the voices of Lee and Guy rung throughout the arena. She seemed to be shaking with anger, and took a deep breath, and exhaled. Okay, time to get serious. Tenten launched an unexpectedly large number of various projectiles at Temari. The blonde quickly snapped open her fan, and with a single wave, knocked the incoming weapons without more than a blink ng of her eyes. Tenten growled, Darn it, she can deflect using her fan. Tamari sighed. Listen, if you're going to do that, you may as well try something else or give up. I haven't even opened it up to the second moon, and I really don't want things to get messy. So, you got any other tricks up your sleeve, or do I have to end this? Tenten's eyes twitched, catching on to the subtle jabs at her pride. Fine, let's see how long you can keep up with me. Tenten pulled out a chain of kunai, and with what could only be described as expertise beyond her age, began throwing weapons at a rapid-fire pace. Tenten's reputation as a marksman kunoichi stood true. She would have hit Tamari if it wasn't for the fact that said blonde was deflecting all the attacks with a now increased effort. Tamari groaned, "Come on. I wanted a challenge, not a warm-up." Tamari snapped open her fan when she found her chance, and blasted Tenten back, causing the brunette to slam into the opposite wall. She let out a cry of pain, but got up and chucked more projectiles. Tamari was beginning to see a pattern: deflect, knock back, deflect, knock back. I think I get it now, Tenten said, pulling out a scroll. You're a long-range fighter. I'll be honest, so am I. But, she opened up the scroll, and with a quick application of chakra, a decent-sized bow staff appeared. I'm the student of one of the greatest taijutsu masters around, so I know enough close combat skills to fight you. She ran at Tamari, and made a jab with the blunt end of her staff towards Tamari's abdomen. Tamari blocked, and jumped back as Tenten tried to aim for her jaw with a foot. Finally, I was wondering if you had anything else up your sleeves. Tamari, while not a taijutsu specialist by any means, did have basic skills in close combat. She blocked another swing from Tenten, and managed to nail her in the stomach with a quick maneuvering of the blunt end of her fan. Tenten fell back a bit, but let out a battle cry and spun her staff around a few times before managing to hit Tamari in the hand. The sound of a crack was heard, and Tamari bit back a scream, noting that her ring and pink fingers were broken on her left hand, and her wrist may have fractured as well. She'd have to end this quick. Tenten wasn't going to back down, it seemed, until Tamari was out cold. Tamari jumped back again, and with a grunt of pain from opening her fan to 2 moons, she swung her fan, knocking Tenten back again. Gaara and Konkuro seemed to notice their sister was taking things a step further. Oh boy, she's either desperate to end this, or she wants to give that girl some serious pain. The puppet user sighed, and a nod from Gaara was his reply. Baki noticed Tamari give a quick glance to her left hand every few seconds. Tenten had managed to score a blow to the blonde, it seemed. He would have to get her healed up. Later on, she wasn't one to let others know of her injuries. Tenten sealed her bow staff back into her scroll, and smirked. Well, it looks like you took me lightly. I hope you learned something from that wrist of yours. She took out 2 other scrolls, and set them on the ground. Sushoryu. She made a few seals, and the scrolls rose into the air, followed by a stream of smoke from either scroll. Dragon-like head formed where the scrolls were, and Tenten jumped into the air as the streams of smoke revealed to be the actual scroll's unraveled paper. Tamari immediately recognized hundreds of seals on the paper. As the 2 scrolls spiraled around the kunoichi, Tenten began to release weapons from their seals. She began throwing them at a very quick rate, much faster than before. Tamari couldn't help but smirk. She had to admit it, Tenten was good, but she left herself open for Tamari's ult. Sorry, but this is where it ends. Komedachi. Tenten had no time to react as she watched her weapons get blown aside by a cyclone of very high-speed wind. Tenten was soon caught up in it as well, and let out a scream of pain as she felt herself get cut by razor-sharp winds. Tamari was glad she held back a bit on using her technique. Naruto hated it when she went overboard like that. Tenten fell to the ground, in a heap, and let out a groan. She blinked to see the ceiling spinning above her, and she closed her eyes as unconsciousness took her. Naruto let out a breath. Good, I was worried she'd go and blast Tenten into next week with that fan of hers. Tenten should be okay in a day at most. Naruto nodded, his hands both tingling as he let go of his wind-sensing technique he had no name for. That last attack of Tamari's had really torn the ground apart where Tenten landed. A team of medic nin took her to the recovery room while the screen yet again flashed through the names. Tamari made her way back up, hoping that she would at least be able to see Tenten again before she left the tower. She had now come to respect to Kunoichi in Konoha. She was starting to see hope for the female ninja in this village after all. Now then, Hayate announced in a hoarse voice, will Shikamaru Nara and Kin Suchi please come down to the battle floor so we can begin the 6th match? Ah, come on. This is such a drag, came the voice of the laziest shinobi in all of Konoha. He groaned as he received a pat on the back from Choji, followed by a louder than necessary cheer from Ino. I may just quit this match and. No way. We came this far, and we're not going to let you give up before you even try. Ino berated as Choji smirked at his poor friend. Asuma rolled his eyes. For a genius, Shikamaru really didn't know when to just give up sometimes and do what the blonde girl said. Shikamaru slouched a bit, and slowly walked down the stairs to get this troublesome match over with. He eyed his opponent, and internally groaned, great, a girl, and she's the one from before, dang it, why do I always get stuck with such annoying? Ready to get beaten, Shadow Boy, Kin said mockingly. The young Nara sighed, she stinks at taunting too. Well, then let this match. Hayate raised his arm, and dropped it to the ground, begin. Kin wasted no time, and threw a few senbon at Shikamaru, who used reflexes contrasting his demeanor to block them. He noticed a few missed by quite a few inches, something was up. I guess I'm going to get a chance to make you pay for messing up our plans back in the forest earlier. I'm going to enjoy this. Shikamaru rolled his eyes, and tossed a kunai, which she dodged as he began to notice how bad her aim was, or how far away she was trying to throw the needles while attempting to hit him. He felt one puncture his arm, and he grunted in pain as he pulled it out. That was a close one, any closer and I could be a goner, he noted as he thought of how close a major blood vessel had been to where the needle hit. She was serious, it seemed. That's when he heard it, bells. Cling, cling, cling. Shikamaru suddenly saw his vision grow hazy, then everything began spinning. He noticed what appeared to be several dozen kin appearing as the sound began to destroy his sense of balance, but then he suddenly stopped lurching around as he was now facing not one, but about 40-some Odo Kunoichi. Not good, he said, trying to see if he could find a way to pick out the real deal from the illusions. How do you like it? By using the sound of bells that I pull from a string connected to my senbon, she demonstrated by pulling a string on her finger, which pulled a bell on a senbon lodged in an opposite wall. I can use the sound waves to mess with your sense of balance and confuse your senses. She pulled out another couple of senbon. Now, time to finish this. Shikamaru noticed his chance, and took it. TCH, I've already won. Kin smirked. Idiot, you really? She tried to move but noticed that her body would not respond to her demands. What the? Shikamaru noticed the illusions disappear, and he got up, and cracked his neck, which Kin did as well. He squatted down, and she followed suit. Hey, Kage Main no Jutsu has worked again. You know, using string to manipulate those bells was clever and all, but my shadow can connect to any existing shadow, and that string connected to your fingers left just the right shadow for the job. Shikamaru pulled out a kunai from his holster, and Kin followed suit, and much to her surprise found herself gripping a kunai as well from her own weapon's pouch. What are you doing? She growled, noticing the look on his face was a bored one. So you've trapped me in a technique, now what? You feel whatever the target feels, right? She smirked as he shrugged, and she did likewise. You got me, but I'll have you know that I can do more than that. How about we play a game of chicken? Whoever manages to hit the other with a kunai wins. Sound fun? Shikamaru smirked as her expression was suddenly one of worry. You're crazy. She had no time to react as they each threw a kunai in the air, aimed for the other's head. Shikamaru leaned back to avoid the weapon while Kin did likewise, a small grin on her face. Ha, what a waste. I'll just avoid the kunai tea. She didn't finish her sentence as her head banged against the wall opposite of her, knocking her out. If she had paid more attention to where she was, maybe she could have done things differently. A true shinobi always takes note of their terrain. Shikamaru decided to end his little lecture to no one in particular and headed back up the stairs, receiving a miniature victory celebration from his two teammates. Ino congratulated him while Choji said he knew that Shikamaru had it in the bag the whole time. Naruto sat back as he watched the screen roll through the names again. He felt a little on edge, wanting to fight badly. That's when his prayers were answered. Will Naru Uzaki and Kiba Inuzuka please come down to the arena to start the 7th round? Naruto let out a whoop of joy and practically ran down the steps before he was caught by the collar. He looked up to see Baki. Naru, remember all that we taught you. Try not to rush things. Patience can be just as great of a weapon as strength. Naruto rolled his eyes, but then gave the older man a sincere masked grin. Thanks, Baki-sensei, I'll do my best. He waved to Kankuro and Tamari, and nodded to Gaara before hopping down the steps, and taking his place on the floor. Kiba Inuzuka smirked as he eyed his opponent up. The kid was a squirt in terms of build, and he looked to be no more than Kiba in age. Hey, this one's in the bag. He then heard a bark from Akamaru. What do you mean? Akamaru barked again. Smell? No, I don't. Hey, yeah. I do recognize that scent. He spoke in a whisper. Do I know this guy from somewhere? Naruto and Kiba squared off, and Hayate already knew this match would prove to be one of the best ones yet. Very well, fighters, take your places and begin. Naruto jumped to the side as a few shuriken flew at him. He found himself looking into the face of Kiba suddenly. Got you. Naruto blocked a fist to the face, and jumped back a bit as he made a seal, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 4 Naruto clones appeared out of smoke, and they all went into a battle stance as Kiba smirked. Hey, too easy. Kiba ran at the clones with speed fitting of an Inuzuka. He smashed an elbow into one clone, then smirked as 2 more made a move to attack. Out of nowhere, a white blur flew at the head of one of the clones, and a second clone was taken out. The white blur landed next to Kiba, and barked. It was Akamaru. What the heck? Using an animal to attack as well. There's got to be a violation doing that. Naruto yelled, but Hayate shook his head. It's completely legal. The Inuzuka clan use dogs for their taijutsu and other techniques. There is no violation of rules in doing so. Hayate replied. Naruto held back a growl as his final clones were destroyed. He grinned. Looks like your taijutsu relies on speed and staying low. Sort of like my own style. Naruto began to gather chakra into his feet, however. I don't need a partner for added strength. Kiba watched as Naruto seemed to rocket off the floor and literally glide at Kiba. The Inuzuka dodged a swift kick, and tried to follow up with a punch to Naruto's jaw. Naruto took blow, and spun around using the momentum of the attack to spin around and deliver a backhand to Kiba's face. Hey, you're good, but I'm only getting warmed up. Kiba pulled out a small pill, and gave it to Akamaru. Alright, you ready, Akamaru? Akamaru barked and began to turn a reddish-brown hue in fur color. Akamaru's muscles grew a bit, and Naruto noticed Kiba ingested what Naruto recognized as a soldier pill. Both of them began to gather chakra, and Akamaru jumped onto Kiba's back. Kiba laughed. This is it for you, kid. Jujin Bunshin. In a puff of smoke, Naruto saw Akamaru was now a copy of Kiba. Great, 2 of them. Naruto gathered more chakra into his feet, and crouched low. Looks like I'll have to take it up a notch. The Inuzuka and his dog ran at Naruto, and Kiba quickly threw 2 small capsules which erupted into smoke. Naruto was soon caught in a haze of purple smoke, and he closed his eyes as the smoke irritated his eyes. You can't hide from us, not when we can smell you. Naruto ducked as he felt a foot miss his head by a few inches. He turned right as his senses told him that someone was coming at him. He made a few hand seals, and shouted, Fuden, Kazabakufu no Jutsu. The smoke flew in all directions, and a figure went flying into a wall. Kiba was surprised, but not unable to react. He pushed off the wall with his feet before hitting, and gave a nod to Akamaru, who was still imitating him. Both backed away from Naruto, and jumped at Naruto. They each began to spin wildly, each creating a miniature vortex. Eat this. Gatsuga. Naruto rolled to the side, and was nearly shredded by one of the 2 spinning attacks. He had little time to react, and saw another vortex fly at him. He concentrated his power into his hands, and a small wind began to swirl around him. I'm not giving up yet either. Naruto made a few hand seals, and then threw his right hand back as he gathered chakra. He felt it reach top speed as the wind around him began to howl. It was as if everything slowed down, watching his opponent flying at him, hearing his heartbeat, and the tension in the air. He grinned. This is why he loved being a shinobi. Futen, Kiratori Keisehigyu no Jutsu. A blade of wind flew at the incoming vortex, and the two blindingly fast forces met each other with an explosion. Naruto saw his chance as dust flew into the air. He looked to see the form of Kiba land hard from the explosion, but Naruto felt something different from this Kiba. He smirked, and made a quick henge while the wind died down. Tamari gripped the railing as she looked to see any indication of who was still standing. She suddenly noticed 3 figures standing in the smoke. She smirked. Typical of him, he's always been a clever fighter with the basics. Kankuro laughed, then spoke quietly to his team, "You've got to be kidding me. Naruto came up with a strategy like that." He laughed a bit. "Man, glad he's with us." Gaara merely watched his friend as the dust was now gone. He closed his eyes and nodded. Naruto had come up with a strategy on the fly, just like always, and just like all of them, they usually worked. Gaara noticed that the Inuzuka boy seemed a bit miffed that Naruto had pulled such a simple yet shrewd maneuver. Now, Naruto just had to find the moment to strike. Kakashi just returned from helping Sasuke with his seal. He was still a bit shaken from what happened a few minutes ago, but it worked out in the end. He made sure that the Hokage was informed as well of what happened. Thank goodness that Jiraiya was in Konoha. Flashback. Okay. Just try to relax, Sasuke. It's not the most comfortable of feelings when suppressing the seal, but it's worth the trouble in the long run, spoke the legendary Toad Sannin. After seeing the battle between Sasuke and Yoroi, he knew that the curse mark was starting to act up. He left to meet up with Kakashi, and performed the sealing process on the Uchiha. Kakashi watched from a distance as a few symbols around the older ninja and his students, and a green light filled the area. Sasuke winced as pain racked throughout his body while Jiraiya applied a seal to Sasuke's left shoulder near the neck where the curse mark was, but he bared with it. Soon, a small seal around the curse mark was visible. There, it's finished. Good thing you were able to hold it back so well, Sasuke. He walked in front to face the boy. Now, in order for that seal to work, you yourself have to have the will to refuse the power of the curse mark. It's only as strong as your will. Got it? It may be taxing on your body at first, but as long as you rely on your own power and deny the curse mark, it should be fine. Kakashi got up from his position on a pillar. Very well. Sasuke, we should take you to a recovery room and let you rest. Sasuke nodded, and got up. A chuckle could be heard throughout the dark chamber, and Kakashi and Jiraiya both looked around. Well, I never expected to see you here, Jiraiya. The Toad Sage turned in a random direction, and was now staring down with a person he hadn't spoken to in many years, Orochimaru. The Snake Sannin laughed. Oh, you speak as though we're enemies, old friend. Kakashi stood in front of Sasuke. What are you doing in Konoha? Ah, that would be giving away the surprise, wouldn't it, Kakashi? I guess I can tell you a little. He smirked as he laid eyes on the black-haired boy, who glared. I have come for Sasuke, but I don't think that will be necessary, he'll come to me in the end anyway. How could you, Orochimaru? Jiraiya said, and he began to gather chakra into a palm, and it soon formed into a small, rotating sphere of power that was the size of a softball. Kakashi made a raikiri and looked at Orochimaru as he lifted his Hitai-ite. My, such killer intent. I do believe I overstayed my welcome. Orochimaru slowly vanished, but his voice continued to echo. Sasuke will come to me in due time. I can give him the power he needs. A sinister laughter was all that remained, and Jiraiya dispelled his Rasengan as Kakashi discontinued his lightning jutsu and covered his Sharingan. We should inform the Hokage. He'll want to know of this. Kakashi spoke, and Jiraiya nodded. I'll get on that. Take Sasuke to a recovery room and get 2 Anbu to watch him at all times until he's fully recovered. Jiraiya added, and without another word, vanished in a swirl of smoke. Right, Sasuke. Don't worry, we've got this under control, okay? I'll make sure to let the Anbu know of what's going on. You should be able to leave within a day or so from the hospital. The Cycloptic Junin spoke. I'll be sure to let Sakura, and Naruto, know how you are, okay? Sasuke nodded tiredly, and walked with the Junin out of the chambers over to the recovery room. End flashback. Kakashi watched Naruto on the ground below, and a small smile appeared from under his mask. Looks like you've grown quite a bit, Naruto. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. Kakashi covered up his Sharingan again after taking a brief look at Naruto. The boy seemed to be using the basic henge for this battle. If all went accordingly, then this was cakewalk for Naruto from here on out. What the heck? Kiba growled as he saw not one, but two copies of himself looking at him. He sniffed the air, and laughed. That was clever, but your smell is still the same. He quickly punched one of the Kiba replicas, and smirked as the faker was knocked to the ground. Kiba watched as the smoke from the henge being dispelled was made, but what he saw made him do a double take. The Kiba he had struck turned out to be Akamaru as the smoke cleared. He turned to the other Kiba, and growled, "That's it. Your history." He socked the other Kiba faker in the face, and watched as they went tumbling to the ground, only to also turn out to be Akamaru. Kiba stood there for a moment, trying to figure out what happened. Then he realized it. This Naro guy had done a henge as he was hit, and turned into Akamaru. Too bad he didn't realize it sooner. Now it's my turn, Naruto yelled, and Kiba looked up to see Naruto running at him with incredible speed. Before he could dodge, Naruto elbowed Kiba in the stomach. Kiba let out a ragged breath, and Naruto used the same arm he elbowed with to smash Kiba in the face with the back of his fist. Naruto then used his other arm to palm thrust Kiba in the sternum, and for a finishing blow, reverse heel kicked Kiba between the shoulder and neck, efficiently knocking him out. Naruto stood straight, and let out a breath. He turned to Hayate, and the Chunin exam proctor looked over Kiba before nodding. The winner of this match is Naro Uzaki. A cheer was heard from Tamari, and a few clapped, even the Hokage. Baki nodded to his student as Naruto headed up the steps. That was a great performance, Naro. You did well with your techniques, and I have to admit that final taijutsu move was fairly good for something you made up on the spot. Naruto grinned, and was about to reply when he was glomped by a pair of arms. That's the way to do it, Naro. Tamari said as she grinned at her shorter boyfriend. You didn't even have to go all the way with your wind techniques that time. Naruto blushed as Kankuro snickered and Gaara gave a small smirk upon seeing Naruto being bear-hugged by their older sister. Naruto didn't mind her affection though. Right, now, for our next match. Hayate turned to the screen. Hinata Hyuga and Neji Hyuga, please come down the floor so we may begin. Neji unfolded his arms, and calmly walked down the stairs. Hinata frowned, but felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see it was her sensei, Kurenai Uehi. Hinata, just believe in yourself, and you'll define. Rewrite, Kurenai sensei. She said quietly, and walked down the steps. She kept her head down, but then realized that she was being watched by her sensei and the others. She took in a deep breath, and looked up. Well, it seems fate has decided that we are to battle, Hinata-sama. Neji spoke with a slight edge. Hinata looked down again, and tried to keep herself from cowering away. Hayate looked to the two, and nodded. He coughed a bit, then spoke, begin match. Neji made no move, and simply kept same stance of looking at his younger cousin with contempt. It's a pity that the heir to the main family is so weak. You were destined to face me though, and I will prove to you once and for all that the main family members are fools to have decided on you to be their successor. He activated his Byakugan, and spoke, with more iciness in his voice. Fate is cruel to many. I for instance have been forced to be put in the branch family, and in turn am a mere slave in their eyes. Hinata felt herself tremble, but something inside her felt pity for her older cousin. She knew the details behind the caged bird seal, and how the main family seemed to abuse its power over the branch family. Hinata didn't agree with it, and in a way, she didn't blame Neji for his anger. He was talented, and she wouldn't deny that. Neji, I'm sure that you can change your life around, if you only try. Neji growled, you just don't get it, do you? We are tied by fate. There is no escaping it. The strong overpower the weak, and that is that. Today I will show you what I mean. Hinata realized there was no way to placate his anger, and she too activated her bloodline. As she crouched low, she saw Neji run at her. The two were soon locked in a combat of Juken, and for brief seconds chakra was visible whenever the two exchanged and blocked each other's blows. It went on like this for a few moments, and Hinata was soon finding herself fatigued. She simply couldn't fight against Neji in terms of endurance. Neji glared at her, his Kekai Genkai staring at her as she did likewise. You see, it's impossible to change yourself. You will forever be weaker than me, and that is that. You will always be that scared little girl who could never stand up for herself, and always relied on others to care for her. Neji delivered a tap to her shoulder, and Hinata felt her arm go numb. She forced her arm up, and went back into her stance. Why, you're wrong. Neji, I believe it is you who is afraid. You're afraid to let go of what has happened, and continue, lie to yourself by saying that there is now a way for a person to change who they are. She gave him a smile. I will prove you wrong. Neji, today, I will not run away. I will show you that I can change. Neji felt his temper rise, and he began another vicious barrage of attacks. Hinata tried her best to dodge and block, but it wasn't helping any. She felt Neji jab her in the stomach, in the left bicep, then the right shoulder, then the lower left part of her abdomen. She fell to the ground, and coughed up blood. No. You are wrong, Hinata-sama. People can never change. Now, give up, while you still can. Neji deactivated his Byakugan, seeing that there was no point in continuing when she was bound to forfeit the match. Naruto was ticked. Sure, he never knew Hinata that well, but he still knew she was a nice girl from what he had seen back in his academy days. This Neji, whoever he was, must have been of the Hyuga clan too. However, he seemed to be a jerk, unlike Hinata. Then again, as far as Naruto remembered from when he was younger, almost all Hyuga are major jerks. He gripped the railing, and looked down at the girl. That jerk was telling her to give up. The nerve. Hey, don't give in. Just believe in yourself. You can do it. Naruto, what are you doing? Tamari whispered harshly as she looked at her blonde-haired boyfriend with a nervous glare. Are you trying to attract attention to yourself? Naruto, however, shook his head. That girl is giving it her all, and that guy is telling her she can't win, simply because she's weaker. I can't stand those kind of people. Tamari nodded, and quieted down. She understood perfectly well. Naruto had been put down all his life. Of course he hated to see it happen. She looked over to Gaara and Kankuro. Kankuro shrugged with a frown, and Gaara merely narrowed his eyes as he watched the battle. Hinata heard someone shouting, and she slowly looked up to the stands to see a sand nin telling her not to give up. She activated her Byakugan, and gasped. She recognized him immediately as she looked behind that scarf with her Kekai Genkai, and those chakra coils. How many times had she sneaked around and watched him from a distance? Naruto-kun, she quietly gasped. He was alive. She felt her strength return. She turned to Neji, a weary, yet determined look on her face. I won't run, never, never again. Neji sighed. So much for using logic with her. He activated his Byakugan again, and sprinted at her. They were soon once again in a dance of Juken, and Neji was stumped on how she seemed to be doing better. He still had the advantage, but she seemed more determined this time. Finally, Hinata reached her limit, and fatigue once again settled in. Neji saw his chance, and struck her in the sternum. Hinata's eyes went wide, and she coughed a bit. She forced herself to stand, and looked to see Neji staring at her with cold indifference. Now, give up, he said. I cannot give up, she coughed, for I never go back. On, my word. I said I would never run away, and I intend to obey my Nindo. Neji had enough. His anger was growing by the second. Injured or not, Hinata was finished in his book. He didn't bother activating his Byakugan as he ran, palm aiming for her heart. The next instant, Neji found himself surrounded by 5 others. Kurenai had put her legs around his ankles so that if he had moved another inch he would have tripped. Guy was restraining Neji's left arm while Kakashi had Neji's right held from behind. Asuma was by Neji's right side with his hands at Neji's stomach to prevent him from going any further. Hayate was in front, index and middle finger pointing at Neji's head so that he would have tipped over emberingly if he had continued. Come on, Neji. I told you to forget about the main family issue while taking the exam. Guy said in a rare serious tone. Neji growled, but relaxed after seeing that he couldn't continue unless he wished to be beaten to the ground. Medics were called in, and they immediately put the still conscious Hinata on a stretcher. She coughed a bit, but was otherwise better than she may have ended up had Neji been more brutal during the fight. However, she was physically unable to continue, making Neji the winner. Heitate coughed a bit. Neji Hyuga is the winner of the match. Now then, for the next match. Hayate watched the computer screen go through the last couple of names, Rock Lee versus Gaara. Gaara nodded, and calmly walked down the steps. He looked at his opponent, and gave a nod. You are the one that helped us in the Forest of Death, Elior, aren't you? Rock Lee nodded. Yes, you are correct. It is a pleasure to be able to do battle with you, Gaara of the Desert. Gaara nodded, and gave a small smirk. Naruto tells me your taijutsu is your main skill, since you cannot mold chakra like other ninja. Is this true? Rock Lee nodded. Yes, taijutsu is my only skill, and I someday wish to prove that one can become a great shinobi even if they cannot use ninjutsu or genjutsu. Gaara felt a small bit of admiration for Rock Lee's attitude. I see, that's quite interesting. Until a few months ago, I had very little skill in the area of taijutsu. I hope that this match should prove to be quite an intense one. From what I heard, your taijutsu is better than most in Konoha. Rock Lee grinned. I thank you for your compliment, but I do believe we should prepare for the match now. Of course. Gaara spoke, and he went into a stance that coordinated with the style that Naruto had dubbed as his sand fist style. Hayate took a few steps back, noticing that the two seemed anxious to start. Very well, begin. Rock Lee ran at Gaara with speed that was even greater than Naruto's. Gaara hadn't expected this, and quickly raised his sand to avoid the punch that Lee would have delivered. Almost instantly, Lee vanished from sight, and Gaara felt the air around him move to one direction thanks to his floating sand particles. He turned, and quickly ducked to avoid a kick from Lee. As Lee tried to recover, Gaara made an effort to kick the genin in the air. Lee blocked, but was caught off guard as a fist of sand came up out of nowhere, and sent Lee to the ground. Gaara jumped into the air, and was going to deliver a stomp onto the boy's stomach, but Lee backflipped to avoid the impact. Dang, that Lee guy is fast. Naruto spoke, seeing Gaara's sand having the hardest time trying to keep up with Konoha's handsome devil. Temari laughed, turning to Naruto. Yeah, but he can't touch Gaara, so what's the point? Kankuro suddenly noticed something. Temari, you better take a look at the match. Temari turned to see a stream of sand trying to slam into Lee. The jumpsuit-wearing boy hopped up onto the giant statue in the arena, and Temari then heard the voice of the equally green sensei of the boy. Lee, take them off. I allow it. Right, Lee replied, and he pulled down his leg warmers to reveal weights. He untied them both, and lifted them. Oh, so he's wearing weights, what's that going? Naruto paused as the weights landed on the ground with a gigantic crash. Never mind. Meanwhile, Kakashi was groaning inwardly as he looked to Guy. Just how much have you taught that kid? Haha. What's the matter, Kakashi? Afraid that I'm a better teacher? Guy asked with a grin. No. It's what you taught him that I'm afraid of, Kakashi said, shaking his head. Gaara watched with mild interest as Lee removed his weights, and before Gaara could react, he felt an impact with his opponent's fist. Gaara went flying, and only thanks to his sand did he land softly. He stood up, and brought forth sand to block a punch aimed for his stomach. You've gotten faster. Lee laughed. I have. It is all a part of my training. With those weights no longer on, I can move much easier and faster. Well, don't think that will give you the advantage. Speed isn't the only thing in a battle. Gaara formed a few shuriken with his sand, Suna shuriken. Gaara then threw the sand-made projectiles at Lee with great speed. Lee dodged all of them, but didn't have a chance to avoid the wall of sand that appeared. He was sent flying into a wall, and as the sand came crawling back to Gaara, the Suna nin spoke. You see, with sand, anything is possible for me. Lee got up, and went back into his stance. It seems that you have a great talent with sand manipulation, Gaara. I too, have a few tricks up my sleeve. Gaara made a move to have his sand pile up on the green-clad ninja, but suddenly found it harder to control. He thought back on the encounter with that Orochimaru, and nodded. Looks like that attack on my seal is causing an irregularity in my chakra control. Gaara found himself caught up in a whirlwind all of the sudden as Lee began to run around the sand user. Gaara went into a stance, preparing to defend. The next thing he knew, he was kicked into the air. He went wide-eyed as he heard a voice from behind. It looks like I'll have to end it like this, Gaara. Suddenly, Gaara found himself wrapped in bandages. What was going on? Oh boy, Naruto said, knowing what would happen next. He remembered seeing this move in the battle against those Sound Nin. Lee yelled out, Omid Renge. And the two combatants crashed to the floor. Lee jumped from the dust with an spinning aerial flip, and landed on his feet. He seemed a bit tuckered out from that maneuver, but remained standing. What the heck was that? Kankuro asked, looking at the giant crater that was the result from this Lee's attack. Yeah, that bushy brow guy has awesome taijutsu. Naruto laughed nervously, and looked back at the match. He noticed that Gaara's motionless figure began to crumble apart, and Naruto laughed. Of course Gaara wouldn't be taken down that easily. Lee watched as Gaara crumbled into a pile of sand, and Lee, despite failing to injure his opponent, grinned, You truly are a great adversary, Gaara. I haven't fought against someone like you ever before. Gaara erupted from the ground, and wrapped Lee in a layer of sand as he calmly walked over to the youthful ninja. Indeed, I agree. Your speed and strength are something I have only experienced to a certain degree. You, however, rely solely on your stamina and physical strength to have such speed and endurance. That is quite remarkable. Gaara then ran at Lee and with surprising power, sent Lee flying through the cocoon of sand and into a wall. Again, Lee got up. Lee was immediately knocked down by a stream of sand, and Gaara once again called it back. I can tell from the way you fight that you don't surrender, so I take it that I will have to defeat you in order to win this match and not ask you to forfeit. Gaara spoke. Lee nodded. Yes, my Nindo won't allow me to back down from a challenge. I must prove myself to everyone that I am a great ninja in my own right. Lee, for the third time, took his stance. Now, come. Gaara wasted no time, and while running at Lee, sent two separate streams of sand towards the green-wearing shinobi. Lee dodged one, then the other, and blocked Gaara's kick with a knee. He quickly sent Gaara back, and then ran at him again. As Gaara got up, he looked to see Lee coming. He decided to wait, and as Lee was about to deliver a powerful spinning kick to Gaara's right, the sand user caught it with his sand. He lifted Lee by the leg, and with a simple downward motion of his hand, sent Lee crashing to the ground. Lee let out a cry of pain, but rolled onto his feet and nodded. Very well, it seems that I must take this to the next level if I plan on beating you. Lee began to gather power, and then shouted, Third gate, life gate. Open. Lee's skin became red from the increased blood flow in his body, and he felt himself flood with power, and his pupils went white while his hair began to flutter from the power surge. Guy grimaced as he watched his student perform the forbidden taijutsu Thankx For Listening, and Guy barely heard the man next to him speak as he was lost in thought. Guy, what were you thinking? How many gates can he open? Guy frowned at Kakashi. He currently is able to open 5 of the 8 gates. To this, Kakashi groaned, Lee is special, Kakashi. Don't question his ability. He's been through more than you can possibly imagine to reach the level he's at right now. I believe in him. Kakashi said nothing, and continued to watch with a bit of apprehension. To know how to use the Urarenge, that was quite something to take into account. Gaara noticed an immediate and significant increase in Lee's power. He braced himself, knowing that all that chakra swirling around the boy wasn't for show. Lee ran at Gaara with a burst of energy, and Gaara had no time to react. His sand was moving very sluggishly, much to the Suna Nin's disappointment, and he was weighed down by the gourd on his back. He found himself kicked square in the jaw, and was sent flying upwards. Lee wasted no time, and shouted again, Fourth gate, wound gate. Open. Lee jumped into the air, and was almost instantaneously face to face with the airborne Gaara. Gaara tried to block with sand, but was sent flying downwards by a fist, or a foot. He didn't know, and before he could even comprehend falling downwards, he was sent upwards, the left, then right, up, right, left, right, down, right, left, up, down, left. Gaara felt his body screaming in pain he only registered once as being like when he fought Naruto. No, this was worse. He opened his eyes a bit, and gasped, what? Lee was face to face with Gaara yet again, now then. Time to finish this. Ura Renge. Gaara felt Lee slam his fist into Gaara's abdomen, and he was sent rocketing downward. He waited for impact, but was surprised to see that he was connected to one of Lee's bandages. He immediately realized he was in for more pain. How? Lee felt his muscles begin to tear, but he had gone too far to stop. Fifth gate, limit gate. Open. Lee yanked Gaara back up with the bandages, and with a might palm thrust to the chest, sent Gaara down to the ground. The arena shook, and Gaara's sand armor cracked quite a bit. He looked to see Lee land, fatigued beyond capable movement of the body. Gaara tried to move his sand, but once again the control he normally had on it was hindered. He forced more chakra into his sand, and finally got it moving. Lee, while tired beyond belief, noticed the approaching sand slowly moving towards him. He tried to crawl away, but felt the encroaching sediment wrap around him. For a brief moment, Gaara thought of breaking Lee's arm and leg, crushing them to be precise, but then he thought of what Naruto had once told him. Harming and killing others was a horrible way to prove your existence. He knew this now. He was here to prove that he was strong enough to serve his village and protect those close to him, not kill or severely harm his opponents. He hoisted Lee into the air by his arm and leg. Even with his muscles torn, Lee forced an arm out to reach for a kunai to cut at the tendrils of sand. Lee, why do you fight so hard? Gaara asked, forcing himself to a kneeling position as he struggled to maintain control of his sand, which could let go of Lee any second. Why do you continue when I have you at my mercy? Lee forced a grin on his face, because I fight to prove that hard work and determination can overcome anything, and to prove that I am a worthy shinobi of the hidden leaf. Gaara nodded, and wrapped a bit more sand around Lee's body. You're an admirable opponent, Rock Lee. I think I understand what you mean, to some degree anyway. However, I must end this. Gaara, with of his wrist downwards, sent the cocoon of sand surrounding Lee to the floor, just fast enough to knock him out. Hayate walked over to Lee as Gaara brought his sand back into his gourd. Lee was unconscious, but otherwise would be fine. The winner of this match is Gaara. As the medical shinobi came to take Lee to the recovery, Guy sighed. Lee put up an amazing performance, considering who his opponent was. I've heard of that Gaara, he's quite powerful. Kakashi sighed. Guy, I swear, that could have ended much worse. Guy laughed. What? You act as though Lee could have had his left arm and leg crushed to pieces. He grinned. Lee's tough. He may have not passed the exam, but he proved that the power of youth is strong in him. He smiled as his teeth gave off a shiny gleam. Kakashi shook his head. Guy was a real nutcase sometimes. Excuse me, spoke a calm voice, and the two looked to see none other than Gaara of the desert behind them. Are you the sensei of Rock Lee? Guy gave him a grin. Yosh. That's correct. You put on quite a show in that fight of yours. Great work. He gave Gaara his nice guy pose. Gaara didn't know what to make of it, but continued. You've taught him well. I just wish for you to tell him that his fight with me has taught me a bit more about my purpose for getting stronger. Thank you. Gaara then walked off to join his group. Kakashi and Guy both looked to the quiet boy, and the Sharingan wielder was the first to speak. That was interesting. Guy, you heard about him, haven't you? Guy was serious for a moment. Yes. He's completed a lot of A-rank missions, on his own. His reputation seems quite different from what he's displayed today. Kakashi nodded while looking over to see that Naruto was running over to congratulate Gaara. Kakashi smiled, realizing what may have changed the ruthless Gaara of the desert to be so calm. The final match of the preliminary rounds was between Choji and Dosu. Choji had received some motivation to fight from Asuma. If he won, he'd be treated to a meal of all-you-can-eat barbecue. Hayate coughed a bit, and nodded to both of the contenders. Right. For the final match, Dosu Kinuta vs Choji Akamichi, he looked at the two, and took a few steps back. Begin fight. Choji immediately made a handseal and shouted, Baika no Jutsu. Dosu jumped away in time to avoid getting rolled over by a high-speed Choji Akamichi. He was still injured from the attack on his arm from the Uchiha, but he would win this. He couldn't lose to this poor excuse of a fighter. Choji rolled at him again, but unlike before, Dosu was prepared. He jumped away and watched as Choji smashed into a wall behind where Dosu was just moments ago. Choji would have gotten out in due time, but Dosu wasn't going to allow it. He winced in pain, but forced his arm forward and with a simple flick of his finger on his melody arm, caused sound to vibrate throughout Choji's body. Gua! Choji groaned, and went back to normal size as his head felt like it was spinning. Hayate walked over to Choji, and confirmed him unable to battle. Shikamaru sighed, well, at least he put up a fight. Ino laughed, oh well, he's still our Choji either way. Maybe we should have offered to pay for a week's worth of barbecue trips though. Asuma laughed, Ino, not even all of our budgets put together could allow for that. Soon the 9 finalists were standing before the Hokage and Hayate while Anko had a clipboard in her hands. The Hokage coughed to get their attention, now then, to explain the Chunin finals. In 1 month's time, the 9 of you will be competing in the village's stadium to prove your skills as a shinobi. These matches are watched by people from all over the land, so keep that in mind as you represent your respective villages. You've all done a fine job today, and I look forward to seeing all of you in a month's time. In the meantime, you will all be given break from your duties to train, so put that time to good use. Are there any questions? Shikamaru raised his hand, yeah, actually, I have one. There's 9 of us, but only 2 can fight per match. That means someone will be left out of the first match and someone else will be doing twice as much fighting as the others in the beginning. The Hokage nodded, that is correct. The layout for the exams will be as follows: Naro Uzaki vs Neji Hyuga. Gaara no Sabaku vs Dosu Kinyuda. Kankuro no Sabaku vs Shino Aburame. Shikamaru Nara vs Tamari no Sabaku. Sasuke Uchiha will be facing off the victor of the match between Gaara and Dosu, and then it will progress with the winners of the matches facing each other. However, keep in mind that you will be judged as you fight, and may be given the rank of Chunin even if you lose based on your performance. On the other hand, none of you may advance, as unlikely as that sounds, it's always possible. Naruto was walking through the streets of Konoha, and took in a heavy breath. Baki-sensei had given them the night off as a reward for doing so well today, even if he was expecting it the whole time from them. Naruto had his arms behind his head while wearing his usual attire along with the scarf. He was tired, but hungry too. He stopped in at Ichiraku, and ordered 1 meal to go. He brought it up to the roof of his old apartment, and with a quiet, "Itadakimasu," began to eat. Oh how he missed ramen. Nice job today, Naruto. Naruto didn't even turn around as he chewed on the noodles. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei. The gears slowly turned, and he wheeled around to face the masked shinobi, Ga. Kakashi smiled behind his mask, and squatted down to face Naruto. So, looks like you have some explaining to do. Hey. Naruto set down his ramen, and began a long-winded story of how he ended up being in Konoha with a Sunagaker Hitai-ite. Kakashi had been sitting with his missing student for over an hour and a half when they realized the sun was gone now. He got up, and looked to Naruto. Well, if it helps you feel any better, the Hokage knows about you being here, and he's not angry. Kakashi gave Naruto a rare smile, even if it was hidden, to his blonde-haired student. We're just glad you're okay, Naruto. We would like this cleared up after the exams are over though. Naruto got up and nodded, right. Who all knows about this besides the old man, Sakura, Sasuke, and you? Kakashi rubbed his chin in thought. I believe Jiraiya-sama knows as well. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He was taught by the Hokage, Naruto. He's one of the Sannin. Naruto shrugged. Okay, I think I'll be staying in Fire Country with my team during the month to train though. Kakashi nodded. Sounds fine to me. Listen, I won't be around that often starting tomorrow. I'm going to be helping Sasuke prepare for the exams. Do you have someone to help you out? Naruto thought about Baki, Gaara, Kankuro, and Tamari, and nodded. Even if they were going to be opponents, they would still help train if needed. Yeah, I'm good. Kakashi stretched a bit. Right then. Naruto, I'm proud of you. I really wish you hadn't left us, but you've proven how much you've grown up since you started out as a genin. I expect an amazing match from you in a month's time. The Junin then gave a final nod, and waved goodbye before disappearing with a puff of smoke. He yawned a bit, and headed back to the hotel where his team was staying at. As Naruto walked into his room, he saw Kankuro, with his hood removed, fixing Karasu while Gaara was watching with mild interest. The two looked up, and Kankuro spoke. Tamari said to meet her in her room. She wanted to talk to you about something. Naruto nodded, and headed over to Temari's room. He knocked, and a come in was heard from inside. Naruto opened the door, and was greeted by a pair of arms wrapping around him. Where were you? Tamari asked with mock hurt in her voice. I wanted to go for a walk around Konoha with you. Naruto laughed as he hugged his girlfriend back. Sorry, I got hungry and went to get some ramen. I met up with Kakashi-sensei as well, and I basically told him since I left Wave Country. Tamari got tense. What did he say? He said he was proud of me, and that he was glad to see me again. He wants to have a few things resolved after the exams are over, but he didn't go into detail on that. Tamari decided to avoid any further questioning for now, and rested her chin on Naruto's head as the two sat on the bed. I'm bored. Naruto laughed. Well, if you want, I can show you the best view in all of Konoha. Tamari raised an eyebrow. Oh really? She leaned closer. Is it a well-hidden part of the Hokage monument, by any chance? Naruto sweat a bit. Sort of. It's really pretty to look down at Konoha from where it is though. I never showed you my favorite part on the Hokage monument yet, and I think you would enjoy it. Tamari placed a kiss on Naruto's lips, a chaste peck, and got up. Well, come on, I'm all ready to go. What are we waiting for? Naruto got up with a grin on his face, and headed out with the older blonde-haired girl by his side. He really hoped she'd like the view of Konoha from the Hokage monument like he always did. A single Suna genin ran through the halls of the village hall, breathing heavily as he did so. He had done what needed to be done, and was more than positive that he succeeded with the mission. He had been told to send a message wayward for Konoha that something was amiss in Suna. Odo spies had been captured, and information had been given, but Suna was smart enough to act like it didn't know. The genin basically had taken a suicide mission, send a message of Odo spies in the hidden sand and their cage being assassinated to the council, while actually sending the real message with a bird towards Konoha. The sound of steel flying through the air was heard, and the genin let out a last cry of life before falling dead with a kunai in his spine, right next to the skull. Two Odo nin appeared from the shadows, and one examined the body. The kid's got something in his hands. The sound nin spoke, and he opened it to reveal a scroll. He unraveled it, and let out a grunt of amusement. It's a good thing we decided to follow this guy, looks like he found out about Lord Orochimaru's plan. The other shinobi nodded. We should report this to command. We can't afford to let any other word of this get out. The two heaved up the body, cleaned the blood stain, and with a hand seal, disappeared to dispose of the body and report their findings. The Suna genin may have died, but the message he sent tied to a hawk that was now a good 3 hours from Suna by foot for a shinobi was carrying a message that would change the course of history for Suna and her ally the Hidden Leaf forever. Something was wrong in Suna, and the word had been sent.